Hey, everybody. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? All right. I don't know whether it's going through the stream or not. We had to make a last-minute change and created a little bit of chaos on our end. So we're kind of working through all of that. So we're just going to stay in this frame or in this setting today. Our first one will be on Monday instead of today. Anyway, Unity Comms makes me frustrated. Anyway, just still used to something else. Anyway, sorry about that. This is office hours, our first our little drop off, and so we're Andy. I'm going to text you. I can't get this link out to an email at the moment.
I'll take care of it.
Yeah, great. We just had to make a couple quick changes here. All right, so. This is office hours, and we're experimenting, trying to figure stuff out. And sometimes the experiments run along the ground a little bit as we kind of work through this. And so we've got a couple things we've got to work out. We're going to keep going and just jump into the questions because I can't think about what I would normally say at the beginning of an hour. All right, let's go ahead and Guy, do we have the first question?
Yeah, first one's coming in from Mike Beardmore in UK, and he asks, has anyone used a Raspberry Pi with Zoom?
Anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, I did. There are two ways how you can do it. You either use the web interface or the web client, but then there's also something you can do with, I think it's called Box64, an emulator that emulates the native Linux client for Zoom on the Raspberry Pi. It works okay. Of course, no 1080p and all that, but it works okay.
Next question. And I realize I don't know if we. Go ahead.
Throw me host and I'll cut on if you want.
Yep.
John Foltz in Selins Grove, Pennsylvania. Does anyone know a way to save Unity Intercom configuration so you can change from one show to another? I'd like to use student names when teaching a class and change to different users for sports or new broadcasts.
And this is, I'm not sure if I'm clear of like the platform there. Is that, let's see here. Oh, Intercom. Yeah. How do you, do people have done that? That's the problem that we have. Anyway, go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, there is an option to back up your config, and you can say that it's not available if you're using the trial version. That is disabled. So if you have the full license, you can back up your whole config and restore that. So that's the only way that I'm aware of to do that. There is no a direct way to import an CSV file or something to reset the users or something.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
I think you might do it by manipulating the JSON that it saves. I'm not sure where it saves it again. I found it one day, and I think you can change it in there too.
Yeah. Next question.
John Pruitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. Last night I recorded a short video with my Blackmagic Designs 6K Pro as a BRAW file. Final Cut couldn't open it. What did I do wrong?
Use Final Cut to open it. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, you didn't do anything wrong, John. Final Cut can't read that file. There are multiple ways around it. You could avoid using Final Cut, which has its own problems. You could take the file and run it through, compressor or something and just change it to ProRes right away. Somebody else has some sort of a plug-in sort of thing that basically allows you to kind of open it, adjust the settings before you import it, but it's still going to make a piece of media. But I will tell you, that's probably the main reason why I haven't considered buying that camera, because I don't want to be forced to use.
Well, you're not forced to. I mean, you can always record in Apple ProRes in the camera.
Actually, yeah, that is a good point.
I mean, you can record a log 4K Apple ProRes, from the camera. It's just you're giving up a lot when you do that, but then you're in ProRes, So
we had a big discussion about this one day in the post show about, if you just want to learn, obviously you should want to do it. Mm-hmm. But if you want to just make money, you may be going down a path that's going to introduce a whole lot more headaches than the benefits that you gain.
There's definitely things that I do with my 6K that I just switch it to Apple ProRes. I record it with video or video LUT or extended video LUT and just pump it out because it's going to come in. I'm going to record it. I'm just going to push it. I'm going to make some color correction and push it out. And so I use BRAW 80% of the time, 90% of the time, mostly because I'm triangulating how to do that, through Resolve. And so a lot of times I'm going in and I'm converting it in Resolve and then I'm putting it out, putting it back out and bringing it into Final Cut or just cutting it in Resolve because it's really the color space management that I'm getting good at while I'm doing it. So even home movies, my 11-year-old daughter had a little end of the year address that they wanted kids to do. So I'm sure everyone picked up their phone and I picked up a 6K and shot it in BRAW and then exported it out, gave it a little bit of vignette,
So what did you cut that in then?
I did cut that in Final Cut. I converted it. I shot it in BRAW and then made the conversion in Resolve and then brought it into Final Cut and then added and then did the final color correction there actually. So it was, it was a mixture of me figuring out that pipeline because at the time I did that, it was a couple months ago, or maybe 6 months ago or something like that. I thought it'd be easier to do it in Final Cut. So, and again, I know Final Cut better than Resolve, and so I'm coming up to speed on Resolve. But I still my primary use for Resolve is to convert things over and then edit to some degree, in it. And so that's just how I use the two.
And one last thing I'll say is that if you do it. Right? If you do it in Resolve, you could throw a bunch. There's probably multiple ways to do it, but one of the things that you can do is if you just throw a bunch of clips into a timeline and you go to export that timeline, one of the settings that you have in the deliver page is export a separate clip for each clip that's in the timeline. So it literally just makes a folder full of the clips for you that have been converted.
Nigel?
Yeah, Color Finale, Denver Riddle, I think his name is, does an import thing that allows you to import straight into Final Cut Pro. That's a tool he's got.
That's the one. Yeah, you told us about that a couple of weeks ago.
Hosmer?
Yeah, we recorded a procedure at the hospital last week with the 6K and recorded that in log. We needed a second camera, so we used Filmic Pro and recorded that in log as well, and that was very helpful.
And it did work. It gives you a lot of range. I mean, once you get used to shooting in log.
Yeah, so once we had both in log, we had full range. It worked really well.
It's definitely worth knowing the log pipeline, whether you're shooting in BRAW or in Final Cut. You can get log out of either one of those because it just gives you a much larger target. So when you're shooting in video in 709, your target is like this. When you're shooting in log, your target's like this. And what that means is that later in post, you can make it here or you can make it here. When you shoot it in 709, you just have a very, very small target to hit. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so what I ended up doing last night was just editing it in Resolve because I didn't know the answer to this. And I was like, I'm going to ask you guys because you're smarter than me when it comes to this.
No, it's perfect.
But I wanted to learn how to do it in my future workflows. And it looks like recording in log, setting this camera to record in log is probably my best option at this point.
You send it to Apple ProRes or BRAW?
Well, right now it's BRAW. I'm thinking about changing it to log in the future, so that I can use Final Cut. I want to learn Final Cut. I know Resolve a little bit better because of the training here, but it's very, I'm not a film editor. It's not my job. I'm doing it mainly to up my skills so that I have something to practice. Plus, I am starting my own YouTube channel, so
nice.
I need to do
very
it.
Good. Absolutely.
That was what I was recording as my first video.
Very good. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Hasbeck in Cape Town, and he says, seeing that we have Andy in the panel, should ZoomOSC/companion workflow behave differently with Zoom meetings as compared to Zoom webinars?
And I think just as that came in, I think we lost Andy. I think Andy's prepping for the second hour. So, oh no, he's there. You just moved. You were down lower before. I just missed you. All right, go ahead, Andy.
Shuffling around. Yes, there are some differences between Zoom meetings and webinars with ZoomOSC. The main one is that you have the option in ZoomOSC to determine whether you want to see the attendees in your output or just the panel. So you can go in and it's called the subscription level in ZoomOSC, and you can determine whether you want notifications from all, just the attendees, just the panelists, up to you. Reasons why you'd use the attendees? Well, if you wanted to create rules such that you could, whenever somebody raises their hand, they automatically get promoted to panel, or you can search and bring people in or do things like that, then you might want to have an all-level subscription. But if you don't want to deal with the attendees because you're mainly doing audio-video work, then you would just subscribe to the panelists. So that would be the main difference there.
Go ahead, Alex.
Andy, can you make it so that you can quickly find the people who have just got their cameras on, or just so you can actually filter for those things amongst the people who are attending? Because maybe if you're attending a webinar, you don't really expect to be included in things.
Absolutely. So there's two ways that we handle that. In Companion, we have instance feedback, so we can turn red or green the color of people with video on, so you could quickly add a dash, see on your button pads who's got video on and who doesn't. The other option, which we'll talk about probably in the second hour, is that we can build Isadora interfaces that have these filters for you. So you can filter by mic, activity level, host privileges, all that kind of stuff. So depends on what you want to build.
Go ahead, Hosman.
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into a liminal support discussion, but what I've noticed for the past week, and it's been consistent, when I use Companion and ZoomOSC in a Zoom meeting, my activity monitor shows CPU usage very acceptable, about 4 or 5% of CPU. As soon as I use it in a Zoom webinar, it hits 98%, 102%, and Companion just becomes totally unusable.
Try setting your subscription level just to panelists and see if the CPU usage goes down.
Dan Benjamin gave me that tip. I've done that, and it still does it, Andy. But we'll take it offline.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Andy, one quick question. I don't see tried to check it earlier before we went live, and at that time I'm not seeing the option to filter to attendee only as well in the subscription level. So is it in a beta build or in an update coming up? It doesn't seem to be in the existing 404, I believe.
It might be that the subscription level is all or panel. So if it's all, you get panel and attendee, and if it's panel, you just get the panel. There might not be an attendees only filter level. But if you need it, it's a good feature request to submit to us.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say to my friend Hasmukh that once you begin asking your question, you actually can put your hand down.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas, and he says, any thoughts on Sennheiser EPOS Enterprise audio equipment and headsets? And he's got a link here.
Yeah, I think that we're going to have to figure out another way. It's really hard when people put links into the questions just because it just slows us down. We have to kind of have them more. It's hard for those links. We'll have to figure out a way to manage that more effectively. Let's jump to the next question.
Another one in from Rupert McRae, and he says, Zoom released an editor's note June 1 saying that Zoom events will be kept separate from OnZoom. It says Zoom events is focused on large-scale business events, external and internal, specifically to seamlessly manage internal events. Could this mean P2P technology like Facebook Workplace?
Yeah, I don't think, do we have all the details on what Zoom events is? Have they released what Zoom events is going to be? I think a lot of people are trying to figure that out. Go ahead, Sky.
It is, again, the OnZoom concept was in beta, and I believe it's a modification of that. So it is a paid experience opportunity for people to create things. I am still looking into it. That's what I know.
Oh, here we go. Here are the, yeah. It looks like they're building off of each other, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly. Go ahead, JJ.
So the conversations we had with the representatives that reached out to Matt in the Kitchen include that some of the branding that exists, because OnZoom is the idea of creating a ticketed system for folks to join in, and Zoom Events is a larger content delivery method that Zoom itself is trying to build, like many of the other content providers out there.
This is going to be really tricky for them. It's going to be really tricky for Zoom to get this right. I mean, I think that there's a lot of this becomes lots of meetings and lots of things. And the reality is that Zoom could probably do more damage with just nested breakout rooms than almost anything. And I've watched a lot of companies do this where they go down a complex path to figure something out when small iterations would make a big difference. So, for instance, nested breakout rooms. that's the feature that everybody needs. Not a lot of. I mean, the other stuff is great, but nested breakout rooms, meaning that you bring everybody in, they can go into a plenary or whatever, and then you can move them to their breakouts. Like they're all going to go to a separate sessions, and then in those sessions can be that you can continue to break out from there into smaller and smaller, theoretically n number of nested breakouts. That's what Zoom should be figuring out architecturally, in my opinion, rather than a bunch of stuff on the top, because that changes everything about how a lot of us do stuff. Is because you can now have much more granular control over where people are. Hosmo?
Yeah, I may be reading this incorrectly, but the ZoomOSC Test Kitchen today has a special guest called Sam Kokajko, manager of Zoom Event Specialist.
Yep.
So he's going to be there this evening. And maybe that's a good place to ask him questions.
Absolutely. So that's the Zoom Test Kitchen, and that's going to be at noon Pacific Standard Time, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's a great place to learn a lot more about Zoom and to work through stuff. And if someone can post the link into Mokana, that'd be great, just to make sure that everyone knows how to get to that. But that's at noon today. So
I'll do that.
Okay, great. All right, next question.
Another one in from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. He says the Zoomtopia Innovation Awards will be in 8 categories: hybrid workplace, more than meetings, connections and experiences, impact to communities, healthcare, education, financial services, and government. Any thoughts on likely nominees?
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
You'll see some of his work today, but Jared Mezazacci is a theater designer on the Zoom platform. His work has been absolutely incredible. He's like every New York Times pick is some derivative of his work right now in the theater community. I think he's going to do he's probably going to do well at this.
Oh, that's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alan Snyder in Cedar Rapids, and he says, looking to get multi-use cables. Any suggestions for strong, possibly braided charging data cables that are Apple MiFi certified, have USB-A and USB-C on one end, and Lightning and USB-C, and micro USB on the other? Also, do USB-C to USB 3.0 adapters work for solving one end of the problem?
Go ahead, John.
So I don't like the multi-headed cables. They don't seem to be as reliable as just a single cable. And so I don't have one to recommend because I just haven't found them very useful for me. The adapters will help. That is a solution I've used. I've got some Amazon Basics adapters for handling Lightning to USB micro and things along those lines, and from USB-C to A. But I would not use the multi-headed ones because I just don't like how they handle it.
Yeah, the ones that the kind of the brand that I have kind of listed for all my basic conversions, OWC for the bigger breakouts, but all my little ones that I have in my bag are made by Uni, UNI. It's just a common brand. It's got braided cables. It's one of my requirements, but they have lots of different ones. I use USB-C to HDMI. I have USB-C to a little breakout. I have lots of those, and they've just proven to work all the time, which is when it's not an Apple product connecting to I find that that's a hard thing to find, that they work all the time. And so they have a lot of different solutions, and they seem to work really well. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Richard Lavery in Belfast, and he says, in the new office hours system, are you changing the resolution before going into the Constellation? Is it 1080p out of the Zoom rooms matched to 4K for the switcher? And he has a note here that says, and what are you using to change the resolution?
Right now, it's still just going into the Constellation at 1080p, and it's the Constellation. I'm actually not certain if the Constellation is at 4K at the moment. We were making some changes yesterday. It was at 4K, and so it will be. What will happen eventually is that we'll just let the Constellation scale it up. With its own internal scalers as it comes in. The goal of going to 4K, my 4K. My test unit comes in today. So the new being able to go to 4K means that all of our graphics, our screen shares, our playback, all those things go to 4K. Zoom will still be 1080 scaled up, but it should look pretty good. And then, yeah, so, and then, what's nice about it is that for the broadcast portion of it, at least, we could use anything to feed those videos in, and so, but we would be able to, the 1080p is going to be, I think, great as we get started. Go ahead, Chris.
How well does the Constellation take a 1080 and scale it up to 4K?
It does pretty good.
Do pretty good?
Yeah. It does about as good as the Terranex does because it's the same tech, same hardware.
Right. And the Constellation is the one that has basically a Terranex on every input, right?
Yep. Yeah. All the newer stuff. I mean, they just started building that in. That's built into the, well, I don't know if as far as that's actually built into some degree into the Extreme or into the Minis as well. I mean, there's certain things that as they build the switchers, Blackmagic has just been making table stakes, which is like the new advanced keyer, the Terranex, inputs, they just start adding things and they just add them if they can, so I think that's go ahead, Chris.
Slightly on this same topic, today, as it turns out, today at 10 a.m. for 4 hours, mind you, our friend Joseph Anashki is doing a 4-hour ATEM
4 hours
like master class. Like he's touching on everything.
It's great.
Yeah, so it's a Pacific thing. It's on YouTube. It's free. I put a link in the Mukana a while ago, but 4 hours of...
Definitely should go. Joseph is meticulous. So yeah.
That's a good word for Joseph, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Shrikant in Chennai, India, and he says, Sony A7 III versus Blackmagic Pocket 6K for virtual events.
Well, you have to ask if you're going to put it into a switcher, into an ATEM switcher for that type of thing. If you're sending it out, what I will say is that the Sony looks better. So the Sony will look better. It's a full frame sensor. I get on meetings. We have a partner that has everybody that works for them. I have the 6K, but everybody that works for them has a Sony A7S III, and it looks really pretty, And so it is a prettier looking camera. I think it's a little, in my eyes, it's a little more kludgy as far as the controls, as far as the interface, and then obviously I can't tie it in. And I've taken the S2 all over the world. I think I left my last one in Iraq, so with a team to keep on shooting there. So, but I've taken them all over the world because of the low light sensitivity, the way that they look, the resolution, and so on and so forth. So they're great cameras. From a practical perspective of what I want to do with a live event, I wouldn't use them for a live event. I use them for records, and you definitely can, but they're more expensive than the 6K as well. So I think you're paying, or it depends on which one. I can't remember their price point at the moment off the top of my head, but I think it's is it in the 3,000 range?
Yeah, it's 3,500.
Yeah, so you're paying more, and I think that I'd rather, for that same price, that $3,500, I would rather get a Blackmagic 6K with a Extreme, switcher that would take me further down that path. Go ahead, Beiju.
Yeah, one thing that often happens, and it's also a consideration we make sometimes, is that we need the camera to take stills as well. So we often have one camera which might be doing both things. So that's where the focus changes a little bit. Also, if you're shooting with other Sony cameras like the FS5s, FS7s, it's easier to match the A7 with that visually, unless you have all Blackmagic, which is a bit of a challenge in India. It's not as common here.
Yeah, and again, we've just really, because we use them with the switchers and because we want to be able to control them, we just, I think that's what Blackmagic has really figured out, is that ecosystem, that we're able to kind of just tie into those things, and I can open up one of many Bluetooth apps to control the camera. Also the autofocus on the continuous autofocus on the A7 S3 is also great. Just follow it. It has some great head motion. That's something that Blackmagic doesn't do very well right now. So that's another challenge there. But I'd still probably lean towards the Blackmagic, but there's a lot of valid reasons, as Beiju pointed out, for the A7S III as well. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Hasmick in Cape Town. He says, Thunderbolt 4, do the new M1-based computers support or need Thunderbolt 4? I am trying to purchase the OWC Thunderbolt 4 hub. Has this shipped?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So, yeah, actually, the Thunderbolt 4 from OWC has shipped, but it is on extreme back order. Last time I talked to OWC, they said mid-July, and that was about 3 weeks ago. So I wouldn't be surprised if you wouldn't get it till August.
Yeah, it's a popular item. And it probably is affected by everything else. Just small. A lot of these components right now are being delayed by one small chip or this other chip, and talking to suppliers, I mean, no one's ever seen anything like what we're dealing with, which is just that they just can't get what they need to finish the products. They can get like 80% or 90% or 95%, but they can't ship the product because of the issues. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so this is the system settings on the Mac Mini, one of the Mac Minis, and it does say Thunderbolt USB 4 right there. So apparently it does support it.
Yep. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Hasmik again, and he says, as I ready for another Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, and do I need the Pro? What lens should I get for overhead of working top in the cooking show? Sigma 24-70 ARM is what I acquired for the talent-facing 6K Pro.
Mm-hmm. All right. Go ahead, Sky.
I've been real happy with the Guy and I used it like a 12 millimeter, and again, you have to get the focus and the distance manually there, but directly over the top, I'm using a 14 to on the 4K over the top is a 14 to 140. It's the Lumix lens, and it gives me a nice flexibility if I want to try to do anything else. Also, to give it a little bit of forward movement rather than straight down, so you get a little bit of perspective there. But again, the gift is the monster that Guy brings to the party, and that's butter.
I mean, the one thing to think about there, and I think it's hard because we're just waiting for Blackmagic to maybe update it, is that the micro cinemas for the overhead cameras work really, really well. So just something else to think about for those overhead cameras. They're a little bit harder to match, into the other camera, but they can be matched. And the advantage is you can get the Panasonic powered iOS lenses or whatever that now you can control from the switcher. So you can just zoom in, zoom out from the switcher, and you don't have to operate it. And so that's you want to have something up there. What I find for the overhead cameras, you want to have something that you can adjust your zoom. Go ahead, Hosma.
Yeah, it's not going to be a permanent overhead. I'll be using it for other events.
Yeah. So if you're using it for other things, then
so it's a 6K camera, so it needs a Canon mount. Am I right?
Yeah. No, for a 6K camera, for that, absolutely. I tend to, the 24-70s are always a great range. I tend to start switching lenses. When I buy lenses, I buy different ones so that I can have different scopes. So the next one up for me is the 70-200, for a longer shot.
So 24-70 should work well for the overhead as well.
It should. You may find that there'll be times when you wish you could reach closer. But it's hard to tell until we see how high it is. But I think that's going to be the thing that you'll find is that the 70 will, you'll just run to the end of that and want to get a little bit closer at times. That's the one challenge there. Go ahead, Jesse.
So I've got two lenses for the Blackmagic 6K, the EFS 10-18, which is a wide angle, which you might want for an overhead. That one was only $300. It has optical stabilization, which probably doesn't matter for a mounted lens, but it's really nice and sharp. And the other lens I have is the Canon EFS 17-55, which is a really nice range. That's a 2.8 aperture. That one was $800, and it's a much heavier, bigger lens. So for an overhead, it might be a little clunky. I think you'd want the wide angle for the overhead personally, but they're both optically stabilized, which you don't get with some of the other EFS lenses. They might be controllable with the Blackmagic switcher, but they're if you're ever doing handheld shots, they're not optically stabilized like the Canon lenses.
What we found in a lot of the cooking shows that we've done is that overhead, we want to get a close-up of someone cutting or a close-up of someone doing something. And in those environments, that's when we need to go a little bit longer than the 70 will probably get you to. That's the reason that a lot of times that's why we go for like a 7200, or a lot of time we use PT, like all-in-one PTZs a lot of times to hang over a cooking environment so that we can, and a lot of those have like 20x lenses, so you can zoom into their fingernails as they're cutting, watch them cut the end of their finger off. You just got to get that one moment. next
it feels like if you're going to zoom in tight, you would actually need the control of the,
and that's why location. Again, for a general purpose one, the 24-70 is the thing that I use. That is my general purpose lens. That's what I use for everything. And then everything else is a specialty solution. So it's a 16 to 35, and then above that, the 7200, and then the 100 to 400, et cetera. But the one that sits on my camera when I leave is a 24 to 70. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert again, and he says, Apple has told employees that they are expected to return to the office 3 days a week starting September with the option to work remotely on Wednesdays and Fridays. Salesforce has told employees the 9 to 5 workday is dead, and staff can choose if they want to return to the office. And he also notes that Dreamforce 2021, however, is going ahead as a global in-person event, and he's got a link to a Wall Street Journal article, and he asked for comments.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I actually watched a news article either yesterday or today where they were talking about some employees actually putting in their contracts now that they want at least 2 days home, work at home, because they, of course, the carbon footprint, but also because they get the better production from doing it at home. So I don't, I personally, I don't have an office to go to. This is my office, so I'm not the best to say on that.
Great,
but when I did work at an office, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. When I did work at an office, I can tell you that there were times where because I did a lot of support stuff, and it would have been nice to actually be away from the office so people couldn't just come to my door with random stuff and be able to focus on what needed to be worked on.
Yeah. Go ahead, John, and then Nigel.
So I was reading another article where they explained that a lot of people were actually quitting their jobs when told to go back into the office. And so that could run into a problem for some businesses. My particular enterprise is being a lot more flexible. They're recategorizing jobs in 4 categories: totally remote, mostly in the office, and totally in office. And 90% of the employees will be in one of the 2 remote categories, either mostly remote or partially remote. I'm going to be in the mostly remote, where I come into the office maybe 1 time a week. And I kind of like that option because there are times, talking to my leadership team, they're telling me that I may come in for a week once a month, or I may come in for a couple day meetings, but it may even be partial days. It's going to be, however, when I need to collaborate with others. It just won't be at random. It won't just be me sitting at my desk for 8 hours. Right. They're like, you can just do much more effective at home that way. So I think we're going to have a huge change and a huge shift in working dynamics, but not every company, see Apple, has figured that out yet. And Apple, their employees may need to work in the office more to keep up the secrecy that Apple's famous for. So that's a legitimate reason for Apple to want to keep their employees in the office.
Good, Nigel.
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors here. The first one is the nature of the work and what you were just talking about. There's some things you can't design hardware necessarily in a remote location. You have to be around a bunch of people. I think there's the unemployment level in the area. So, if there's a lot of choice in people, they'll have to be more flexible. But at the end of the day, this is about culture and the company and the ability of their management to manage remote people. So that's where this really falls apart. It's not an employee problem. It's really a management skill.
Yeah. Alex?
It's also, to some extent, an HR problem, because some managers are actually motivated by visible achievements in offices, like how big they have an assistant, that they have an office, they have a nice office, they have a corner office, they're on a special floor, and it's harder to do on Zoom. So they're going to have to. This may be a motivation problem for managers who are a bit
better cameras. Managers get better cameras.
Exactly.
There were a couple of the companies that we've worked with that ordered literally thousands of like $5,000 setups for all of their managers to make sure that they were able to communicate effectively, and that was like last March. Like they just went straight into it, like we're just going to buy up everything, and so a lot of I have a couple friends that benefited from that. I didn't, but they did, where they had to sell suddenly they had to build up thousands of units to solve that problem. So I think that. I think that the next step is going to be people having a room in their house, and I think people now are being able to move to somewhere where they can afford a room in their house that's just dedicated to work, and I think that definitely helps me. I think that it would be very hard for me to work remotely if I didn't have a dedicated room to it, so I have a room in my house that is my little works, this mess that I've created, that if I was in the middle of my living room, this would be very, very difficult in my opinion. So, and I have the biggest problem. The biggest problem I have is that my office isn't my room at the office isn't as set up as my room in my house. So I have a hard time going in. We're fixing that. But yeah, I think that we're just starting to see we've just pulled this string. Like, I think we think that everything's just going to go back to normal, and everything feels like it's going to go back to normal, but people have seen some other thing in many different places. People have learned how to cook, and they've learned how to, work at home, and they figured out these things, and they realize, oh my gosh, like when I talk to so many people that get back in the car, and it's now the traffic is building back up to normal Bay Area traffic, and people are like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like they just like, like after not doing it for a year, they're like, I don't want to do this. I need to be able to work at home. And that's where a lot of this is coming, is it was easy to go back to work when there was no one going back to work. But as soon as it went back to, you just realize the insanity of the traffic jams, in a lot of these big cities. I think that's because you just realize you're just burning up your day sitting in a car. It's completely crazy. Hosmuk?
Yeah, it's been painful, and my wallet has choked several times, but I had to literally replicate everything I had in the office at home. Mm-hmm. So the audio, video chain and everything else, lights and everything else. And like today, I just didn't feel like going into the office. It was very easy to slip in at home and work from home.
And that's you're having the freedom to go back and forth. And I think that the other thing is that while these companies build lots of really great things to do, there's something about just being able to take a break, at lunch, and just, take a nap or sit outside and eat in your backyard and not have to deal with, not be in the company space, that I think people really like, so it feels a lot more human. And the problem, the real challenge I think we have as an industry that we really have to think about, or as a society, is that we're about to make a huge change in where the best companies and the best workers can do anything from anywhere. The best companies will have if they're willing to do remote, will have cream of the crop of whoever they want working from their house in wherever that is in the world. The best people who are the best at what they do will be able to work from anywhere that they want in the world for anyone that they want at a good salary or a good rate of however that works. And there's a lot of people in between, that are going to have a really hard time. And we just have to think about that. Like how do we take care of that in between group? Because that's what we saw with, Amazon, is that you have to be really good or really cheap, because people can now sort very, very fast between brands. And so we're going to be able to sort through those things. And I think that things like what we're doing here is really important, because it keeps us continuing to move up into that, we can work everywhere. We can hire each other. We can, be part of these larger communities. And I think that education or being able to move ourselves forward, continuing education is something we have to do every day, which we've all been doing every day for the last, over a year. But that's what we have to consider a priority to stay competitive, because things are moving fast now. Next question.
Next one's coming in from John Preto in Las Vegas. I spent hours trying to get Dante to work on my iMac Pro to no avail. I loaded the virtual sound card on the PC and it worked first time. After consulting with Mickey, the 10G Ethernet port on the iMac Pro has issues with Dante. Problem solved.
Trying to save hours for the group, because Chris and I and Dougie spent hours and hours trying to get this to work properly. And
so it's just, you're now using a USB to Ethernet?
Yeah, exactly. Correct.
Yeah. Interesting. Jim?
I was just going to say I had the same problem, but with a Mac Mini 10 gig. So, yeah. Mickey is a time saver for sure.
That's great. Next question.
Next one comes from this guy, which is me. And I ask, does the YouTube algorithm seem to give more juice to a direct feed versus a Zoom stream?
I don't think so. It does. We've had higher view counts over the last couple of days that we started doing the stream, but I think people are just interested in the crazy mess that we're making. I think it's just it's just been an interest of the subject matter, as opposed to any kind of thing that that YouTube's doing. I don't think it's treating it any differently. It looks better. So, I think that even when we're just screen scraping, it looks better on Zoom than it did before. So that's part of it. The second piece of that is that, so it looks and sounds better, which will have a higher retention. The average view time goes up. And so it feels like there's more people, because we always have to remember that more people is a equilibrium between people entering and leaving. So if your retention goes up, then the number of concurrent viewers will go up. So this gets back into the quality does matter. That you do have to, the good audio, the good video, everything else makes it easier to watch. But I think that the biggest reason we've seen jumps in the last couple of days in our viewership is because we were doing something new and different, and people are just wanted to either watch, they wanted to rubberneck the car crash like this morning, and the other ones, or they wanted to just learn from what we're doing, and figuring out because we're about to do some stuff that's pretty innovative. Go ahead, Ken, and then Jeffrey.
Yeah. Plus, we have had over 2,500 people come to the site. Not all of those have registered, but they sort of come to the site, and so they're being more aware of office hours. And then with the link, then they're coming to view. So there's a link from the Apple site to our site, so that could also be affecting our viewership. So from the developer site, if you dig into like extra events around WWDC, there's a link there too. So it's increasing some of the flow to our site there. Jeffrey, and then John.
The general answer, though, is no. YouTube does not promote one over the other. They are very agnostic when it comes to.
They're not very agnostic, but they're not doing it in this case.
In this case, yeah. Well, yeah. If there's something that they're promoting, and it's all about promotion. If you bring people to your channel, people will watch. It will get more view times, and then it will look like it's being promoted. But the reality is, you're the one that's doing the majority of the promotion. So that's the key right there. A lot of people, if they're getting like 1,000 views within the first day, normally they're either got some great extra social channels, or they're finding ways to get people to come view the video at least for 90 seconds.
Yeah. The usually when they launch something new, like the 9:16 videos, definitely were given a bump if they were given extra juice if you did 9:16 into YouTube. And Facebook used to have a situation where if you went live mobile from your mobile phone, you would get much more coverage than if you did it from a RTMP. So they're always trying to kind of quietly encourage. Someone would say manipulate. We'll say encourage people to use the new technologies they're trying to break into. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've actually been watching YouTube, and I'm thinking maybe some of the other panels are too, so that I can actually see how the show looks now. Before, because it's not being streamed on Zoom the same way it is as the panel view, well, I can't really see it unless I'm watching YouTube. So that's that. Until we get a separate feed or some other way, I'm kind of now, not today, obviously. It's usually the second hour. I have to watch the show through another means.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Marcus Lafouk in Trinidad and Tobago. At the moment, what is the minimum spec Mac to run Zoom ISO for 4 NDI outputs?
I can take that.
Go ahead, Andy.
So on Zoom ISO, we've tested on a bunch of different configurations, and we're in the process of testing it on all the different Macs now. So if you're able to, I'd appreciate you visiting our website and filling out a feedback form if you're able to get the specs on your machine. What we've seen so far is that we can do an M1 Mac Mini can output 4 1080p feeds. The issue is that getting NDI to work on an M1 is sometimes a bit of a headache. Now with NDI 5, it's going to change, and that's something that we're obviously watching pretty carefully. But most of the systems that we've tested, which are your MacBook Pros and your Mac Minis and things like that, have been able to achieve the 4 NDI 1080-30 outputs.
Go ahead, George.
So did some back and forth with Andy yesterday. So definitely I've tested the 4 on a MacBook Pro 2017. What do you also have to do your calculations also? So 4 streams of 1080p is going to be about 7.4 megabytes per second. So that's 29 gigs. So your Thunderbolt is 40 gigabytes. So you have to make sure that you're not overtaxing your system. So you want to run it on a separate machine because you're going to use up 29 gigabytes of that 40 on a basic machine.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Samuel Nordvik in Norway. What is the best way to set up an internet failover to a backup internet connection? I have a Ubiquiti USG with a port that can be assigned to a second WAN. Is this a good solution?
Yeah, you'll probably see a drop of a couple seconds, in that kind of drop over, that failover. Go ahead, JJ.
So a failover is exactly that. If it's just a hot and a cold spare, when you fail over, you'll see a drop in whatever session. But if you have SD-WAN, which is a little different, that's where you have two carrier connections that are constantly streaming the same information along both streams, and so you see no drop. But that requires two known locations and two appliances on each end of those two known locations. So that's a better way. The best way would be along those lines, and that wouldn't be a Ubiquity. That would be what's the name of the company?
Well, is it? Yeah.
Anyway, there's only one good SD-WAN solution. It's the big company. That's Oracle.
Cisco.
Cisco, yeah.
No.
Meraki.
No. Oracle.
Okay.
Not Cisco. Cisco doesn't have. Cisco has SD-WAN Lite.
Yeah.
It's not a true SD-WAN. The Oracle solution.
I will say that we don't have a seamless failover. What we have are two Merakis that will basically have two internet connections into each one of them, and and one's a hot spare. So it will, if one fails or if the internet fails, it's got a variety of ways of kind of rolling back over, but we will lose it for a second. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Stuart Fairweather in Melbourne, Australia, and he says, iPhone 7, best apps to load for an 80-plus-year-old person to use as a camera, etc.
Go ahead, John.
Well, as a camera, I would just stick with. I'm assuming you're wanting to go for simplicity, so I would just stick with the Apple Camera app built in. Yeah. As far as the other stuff, I'm not sure what they need and where they're located, so it would depend. Which is our favorite answer.
And we're gonna accelerate because we're running out of time. Next question.
Mason in Pasadena asks, office hours Discord, how?
You seem to be here at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in Mukana. And then the Discord link is distributed, and then you click on it and you're in. But you have to be here at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's when we distribute the Discord link in Mukana. And yes, it's a little hard. Yes, we make it hard. We do that on purpose. So that's just what everybody had to do. All right, next question.
Stan Chan in Roseville, are there any VST plugins that work on Apple Silicon?
Anyone? I'm about to say anyone. Anyone? I don't know if we know. I don't know if we've tried that. All right, you stumped us. Mickey is busy working, I think, and that's the challenge right now. He would normally have that answer. Come back on Tuesday and ask that, because that's when a lot of our audio engineers are here. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Giuliani in Alexandria, Virginia. And he says, yesterday I received a Blackmagic Design 2ME thanks to DVEStore. Hey, I know those guys. I am replacing an ATEM Television Studio Pro. After the switch, I can't get computers in using BMD Mini Converter HDMI to SDI 6G. Is this an issue with the Mini Converter?
I think what I would do is make absolutely sure that your 2ME is set to the same frame rate. So the 2ME doesn't have the internal frame conversion. So if you set your 2ME to 4K, all the inputs have to be 4K or it won't see them. So I think that may be the issue that you're having, is that you have a 2K now or 2ME and you want to use 4K, but now you have to upconvert everything into it. You have to convert it because it doesn't have the first one. There's a couple other ones, but you have to look at it. The newer ATEMs all have that frame conversion, but the 2ME, the 4ME, the production studio. And so probably what was working before was that you had the same resolution going into your production studio, and now you're in 4K. So if you bring that 2ME's 4K down to 1080, you should find that it works perfectly. It's probably just black, right? It just doesn't show anything input. Yeah, it's just not. Those frame rates have to be matched up on the older switchers. Next question.
Okay, thanks.
Next one's coming in from Hasmick, and he says, not a question, but update regarding Synology question yesterday. This is what I ended up ordering. And he has ordered the Synology 6-bay NAS DiskStation DS 1621 Plus. It's diskless. Huge price difference between 4 gig and 8 gig of system memory.
What would you need 4 gig versus 8 gig? I mean, I would normally get 4 gigs of system memory. Is there a good... Yeah, go ahead, John.
It has several programs that it runs on top of it. And so if you're running multiple programs, and I think it also uses it for some caching as well.
Got it. Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana says recommendations for NVMe or what to stay away from, and is 2 terabytes enough for an ATEM Extreme ISO 3-hour production?
I have been getting the Samsungs. I find that there's a huge price jump from 1 terabyte to 2 terabytes right now. And so I have the Samsung 960s, and then there's the 960 Pros. The 960 Pro was a little back ordered, so I ended up with the 960. It seems to be working well. But you just want to make sure that it's the enclosure that matters. You know, with the NVMEs, is making sure that it's got good, it's got fins because they get really hot. You'll find cheap ones that are really small that are just bigger than the NVMe, and if you start putting pressure on them, actually writing continuously, you'll find that they start to fail, overheat. And that one, is that one working well for you, Chris? Have you recorded from a camera at full res?
It definitely overheats if you try and use it for too long.
Yeah, that's the hard part with records.
I accidentally bought too many NVMEs, and then I found this little enclosure for like $40 or something. So I thought I'll put it in there. And, you know, it's fine for transferring files between machines, but I wouldn't want to do any. Yeah.
It's the continuous thing. And I'm still having trouble. Like with the 12K that I'm testing right now, you know, when I'm really pushing it, you know, 8K, 120 frame per second or whatever, I have to let it sit for a second before I can do it. So even with the bigger enclosure that I have, heat is a real issue in that process. But I'm pushing 700 megs a second. Next question.
That's a lot of Ks.
It's a lot of Ks.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael. I know that one of the steps you take to master a stream mix for most audiences is to filter out excessive low and high frequencies. What high-pass filter, low-pass filter settings would be best for those listening on mobile/consumer devices?
Generally, we roll off somewhere at 80. You know, for us, I mean, you know, it's like 80 to 100 somewhere there. We roll that off. Most of those things are not necessary. And then, again, that's a great Tuesday question as opposed to a regular day question. But I think that I tend to roll off at 10 to 12 on my end, and just kind of push that down, because there's not much up there that you need. If you roll off any lower than that, it'll start to sound muffled. AM radio is about 7, and FM radio is at about 11. So that gives you kind of a place to go think about. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Mark Horner in Seattle, Washington. The PTZ camera in Mad in the Kitchen is cool, but seems underutilized. How might shows like Mad in the Kitchen effectively use PTZ cameras to promote engagement and build their audience?
Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Well, in theory, there are cool examples on Twitch where you can donate to move PTZ cameras. There's one where you can donate to feed ducks and then move the PTZ camera to see the duck that you like the most. Make the viewers be able to switch to presets. That's a cool thing. And then for Mad in the Kitchen, we could implement the camera into the system. But right now, the camera is just for you to have a look yourself. So you can just right-click and camera control, or if I want to show something.
As we kind of build up what we're doing with office hours, we're going to end up having a Zoom where you can just multi-pin on lots of feeds. So rather than having, you know, it'll be many cameras or many signals that we're sending out. So if you decide you want to watch this show from behind the scenes, we're hoping not to lose too many people who actually want to be in the show. But if you see that, you might see scopes and multi-views and all kinds of other stuff that are all there. And so you just kind of see this, and you can just multi-pin what you want. I think that's kind of where we're going with a bunch of those pieces. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
You can use a program or two. I know Companion will do that. You just have to set it up, and it's a long form setup. But the idea is that you can actually make it do pans and movement all around by just doing millisecond switches.
Next question. We're going to move really fast now.
Douglas Carmichael, what specific IT skills would serve me best in the broadcast/online media community? Currently, I'm working on a Cisco CCNA and also have extensive experience with Linux server admin and desktop support. Note, I've heard a lot of discussion about AWS. Would that be the most marketable skill to add to what I have? I've also taken all 3 Dante courses and own and love a Wave SoundGrid studio system, which is running through my Juniper EX2200 switch.
Mm-hmm. I think you're on the way. You've caught our attention. So I think that understanding networking at a real granular level is really valuable to what we're doing. AWS, I think, is very valuable to what we're doing. Jim can probably talk to more about that, but getting those certifications, I think, are valuable, and really using those certifications as a way to understand it. And definitely, because a lot of this stuff, we're moving more and more towards, as we ramp up office hours, it's going to be mostly, IP, most of it going in. Jim, real quick.
Yeah, I would just second that. And I come from a similar background. I spent a few years at Cisco, as a matter of fact, and Cisco certifications. So Amazon certifications would definitely be something valuable for you. So check that out.
And I want to thank Douglas for the lots of questions. Douglas is our new question czar. We'll hopefully get to all of them by the end of the hour, but great work. Good questions. All right, next question real quick.
Another one in from Douglas. With the impressive amount I've seen just here and on Mad in the Kitchen from the BMD ATEM Constellation, what does a Grass Valley K-frame, for example, bring to the table that the Constellation can't do? The main differences seem to be in redundancy, reliability, and effects versatility.
I have to admit, I'm not used to the K. I'm not familiar with the K-frame. I think that's the smaller one that they have. I think that there's some 3D transforms that are better. I think that there may be more downstream keys, but I'm not certain. But those are definitely some advantages to it. But I mean, I wouldn't. There's definitely larger Grass Valley that I would love to have, but I would stick with my ATEM most of the time because of the API. Next question.
Another one in from Douglas. During the COVID crisis, a lot of media and...
Douglas, you might have to take some of these back because we're going to stop at the bottom of the hour, but you're asking great questions, so I don't want to scare you off. I just know that we're going to get to the end of the hour, but please keep doing what you're doing. It's great. Next question.
Okay, so...
what's that question? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. During the COVID crisis, a lot of media and government PR has made much about global collaboration within the scientific community, helped find solutions quickly. Note, are there market-specific software tools that are most commonly used within the scientific community, or is it mostly the same tools other industries use?
And these are great questions. So definitely get them in early too, not because get them voted up because they're great questions. The Zoom is what a lot of scientists that I know are using to talk. It's just mostly being able to talk cleanly. Being able to, the things that we think will help are things like this, being able to draw, being able to, interactively, converse. Those are all things that are important. Next question. This is probably the last question of the hour before we move to the second hour.
Okay, another one in from Douglas Carmichael. In the introduction to a large concert, they used a jet engine startup sound with lots of low end after a countdown. Would there be a crew safety risk putting a mic so close to a jet engine? And would the sound overload most mics at such a close distance?
Sure can. My guess is they practiced it a lot. If you're gonna do that kind of thing, if you're gonna come out of the gate that way, then usually you better be ready for it. All right. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, quickly, we had those people on that did the NASA shoots, and they said that they used the term sacrificial microphones. Like, it's going to work. It's going to work for a moment, and then it's going to get burned up.
In production, we use what we call crash cams. I mean, and I was talking to my brother. He was working on a TV show that's coming out, and they use the Blackmagic. They use Aries for all the, that's what he's got on a Steadicam and everything else. But on the cars, for crash cams, they're putting Blackmagic 6Ks. And he said they cut into the Aries great, and you don't feel as bad when they're gone, which is happens almost immediately. Like it'll be for one shot. They'll have the camera, and as long as the memory survives, that's all they care about. So it's, when you have a budget of a couple $1 million an episode, you can throw away some cameras, but you don't want to do that with the Aries. That would make you sad. All right, I'm so excited to shift gears here. We're gonna jump into the second hour. Mark, I apologize. We had a couple shifts. Poor Mark had we're gonna do it this way and then we're gonna do it that way. We're just gonna keep our normal process here and kind of move it forward. But I want to introduce everyone to Mark Coniglio, who is the founder of Isadora, and Isadora was just as a real quick introduction. I have to admit, it was fairly new to me until Andy Carluccio, who's here with us today as well, started showing how he was using Isadora with ZoomOSC, and suddenly we're like, what is this tool? It is amazing, And I was like, how did I not know about it? And so we've been watching it and learning from learning from Andy and other folks here. Talak has also educated us a lot on how this stuff comes. He's unfortunately unable to join us today. So I was just really excited. Mark and I had a great conversation last week, and I was just really excited about the history of this and how we got to this point and how Isadora came out and how it works. And so I wanted to bring Mark on. And so, Mark, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great. Great.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
I just have to jump in before we start with one Airflex story, since you told that thing about the Blackmagic.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of my best friends is the head of camera design at Airflex. He designed the Alexa.
Oh, nice.
And so they had a camera in a car crash scene in a movie. It was all protected with like plexiglass. It totally went wrong. The car went over it, exploded, and burned up the camera. And there were a lot of sad people. But after it was all said and done, they went over and they flipped the switch, and it still worked. And so now Ari carries it around in a plexiglass case to trade shows to show how tough those cameras really are.
They are amazing cameras. You know, like we talk a lot about Blackmagic, but a couple of weeks ago I was shooting a bunch with the Amira and a couple other ones, and they're just they're beasts of a camera. So it's
that was one of my early programming jobs, was working for Airflex, making software for their cameras, actually.
Oh, that's amazing.
Anyway, here I am, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's really, really great. And you're coming in from Vienna, is that correct?
I am currently in Vienna. My main home is in Berlin, but I kind of oscillate between both cities, in fact. But today I'm in Vienna.
That's great. And tell us, before you tell us about where Isadora came from, we just have to talk a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get into creating software tools, or where did this all start?
Well, if you're going to ask me that question, I'm going to try. Now I'm using a free tool that we made, by the way, you should all know about in case you need it, called Siphon Virtual Webcam. That's to allow the output of Isadora to go directly into a camera. And I hope, that's where it all started. That's me in 1989 with a Macintosh Plus, 128 megabytes of memory, because I had invented a piece of software to allow me, the dancers there are wearing a piece of hardware that measured the movement of their limbs, and it sent that on a wireless connection to this control center where I was, so that the dancers, through their movement, could make music, so that they were actually both musicians and dancers. And that's really where the whole story starts, because I was studying music composition at the California Institute of the Arts, and under an amazing composer called Morton Subotnick. And I was already a programmer for money since I was 16, but I loved music, and somehow I brought this together. And then that led to the founding of a dance company called Troika Ranch, where the focus of it was, how can we allow dancers not just to dance, but to control all parts of the theater? How can we extend their body so it touches the video, the sound, the light, every part of the theater through their movement? And it was in that world that eventually in 1999, I was dissatisfied with all of the tools available. And I said, well, I'm just going to make my own tool that can do exactly what I want it to do. And that's where Isadora came into being. It's named after Isadora Duncan, who is arguably the founder, or she's the woman who takes her ballet shoes off and founds modern dance as we know it. And that's why I named it Isadora, because I was so involved in the dance world. So that's like the origin story of the software. Yeah.
And I think that it's always, I think a lot of the best software is written because someone's just trying to fix something. Like they're trying to fix their own problem. And then it kind of just keeps going and turns into something that people want to buy. But it's not, but it starts with just trying to, solve this issue. So what was specifically, when you decided that nothing else could do what you needed to do, what were those things? What were you solving originally?
Well, the thing I wanted was to be able to move extremely fast in a rehearsal situation. It's true of all performing arts, but it's especially true of dance. They can't sit around and wait for you to fix the tech. They have warmed their bodies up for an hour to prepare to be on stage, to be in rehearsal. And if they're waiting for a 45 minutes while you fix something, their bodies are now cold and they can actually injure themselves. It's actually a health issue as well. So I needed to be able to have a tool that I could just touch it and immediately try something. I needed a tool that would allow me to take notes of ideas that I like and bring it into a rehearsal. And mostly I wanted the ability to not only take in data and use it to modulate all kinds of media, but also to make decisions and to respond to, to do more than just like route it, but to like massage that data and use it in interesting ways. Yeah. So there was no tool that did all of that. I mean, there was like Max. If some of you know Max MSP, that was a tool that people in that world were using a lot, but it was so cumbersome to work with and it was not fast. Right. And for me anyway, I mean, maybe for others it was, but for me it wasn't fast. So I set out to make this just so that I could be as fluid as an artist as possible in a rehearsal situation and create without having to stop to think about how do I make this work.
Right. And if someone said, what is Isadora, how would you describe it to them? Like that. You go ahead.
I would say that it is a node-based programming language that allows you to graphically route data and manipulate media, all kinds of media in real time. I don't know. I never have a really good, I don't know. It's weird. I've never had a great way to describe it, but that's like, I mean, the shorter way is to say it's a software tool that allows you to take real-time data and manipulate almost any media that you can imagine. I
have the same problem here. People ask me what office hours is. I'm like, I don't know. Get together and start talking. It's hard to describe until you use it.
Yeah.
So do you want to go ahead and I think you have something you wanted to show us?
I set up a few things. If you don't mind, I'm going to just start with a super brief slideshow because I think it's sort of interesting for me. Now, hopefully you're seeing some waves there. Yeah, okay.
We do.
So I'm feeding, like I said, I'm feeding the output of Isadora in as a virtual camera now so that you can see it. And so this is just my little quick, dog and pony show. Is it flipped the right way for you? For me, it's backwards.
It is. It'll be backwards for you, but it's fine for us.
All right, super. So anyway, that's the logo. And I just want to look at this little slideshow for a moment. There I was again, 1989, the bad old days when computers crashed and there were only floppy drives. But then, these are a couple pictures of the work of Troika Ranch, just some from, about 10 years or so ago. This piece we won a Bessie Award for in New York City. That was something I'm really proud of. That's called Future of Memory. Another piece, here the dancers are generating all the imagery you see being projected behind them through their movement. There we were using camera tracking. They're no longer wearing anything on their body. And this is 2006, so it's, it was early in the process. But just also to let you see some of the other ways, because I'm not in the sort of broadcast world. I think a lot of you are in the broadcast world, but Isadora is used primarily by artists in theaters, one way or the other, whether they're doing at some funky small performance space, or here is an example from the National Opera in Poland, a very famous director, and this was all done with Isadora, as was this also in the same place. A beautiful setting there. All the projections were created in Isadora. Here's a piece the design was created by Alex Oleszewski, who this is the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. And all of the projections you see here in the back and on the floor were all done with Isadora.
And they're controlled by Isadora, or does it just manage does it actually play out the media, or is it controlling other things that are playing out?
No, it absolutely plays out the media. I mean, it depends. Some people use it in different ways. Now, like in this case, it's a media server, but it's a super intelligent media server because it has all of this capability for real-time input, which we'll get into in a minute.
Right.
But I don't know this piece that Alex is an amazing user of the software, but I suspect this was mostly about queuing video and also doing projection mapping. Isadora has an integrated projection mapping tool that allows you to get this all lined up and to put it in the right place, right? So I think this was probably more the traditional media server thing. But for example, I know of examples where people are using Disguise D3 or however they call themselves now, which you all know is a very expensive piece of hardware and software. But they're using Isadora as a front end to take in the data and tell D3 what to do because it doesn't have the decision-making capabilities that Isadora has. So you can, that's another way you can use it because you can use protocols like Open Sound Control to send messages from Isadora to tell some other piece of software what to do, right?
Yeah.
So let's see. So what I wanted to show you after this, just quickly. Now here I'm going to have to switch to screen sharing. I hope this works. I'm a little nervous about this particular switch. Let's see. I'll go back to seeing me. There I am.
And if you have questions as Mark's talking, go ahead and throw them into.
And then I just have to hit the share screen here. Host disabled, participant screen sharing.
We'll make you a co-host here in just a second.
Thank you. Sorry, I have to tilt my thing because the button for the screen sharing is behind me there. Okay. It's not allowing me to do the desktop, huh?
It should. Only, I
see whiteboard, Isadora office hours, but
you want to do a general desktop. I don't know.
Yeah, I was hoping. Is that possible or no?
We have that turned off, and I'm not sure if I can turn it on during the show.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand that part.
That's okay. I mean, the problem is, hold on. I assume you see Isadora's user interface, but you don't see the actual output in a preview.
No, we see the stage output.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect. All right. So now, thank you for getting me through that. So a little birdie told me, named Andy, that we were going to be talking to a lot of broadcast people, and he's like, you might think about a couple of things to try and show. And he said, he gave me a few topics that might be interesting to you. So I got up this morning and I started doing this, and this is what I came up with. So here, and you'll see, hopefully you can see this. I've got just a movie playing. And I made a little control panel. So, here's the node. I said it was a node-based programming language. Well, here are the nodes. And by the way, if you don't do this kind of stuff, maybe that looks kind of intimidating and scary. But the thing that made Isadora a success at the beginning was that choreographers and dancers were using it because that's who our audience, that's who knew us. And, these are people that don't have a lot of technical experience, and they were using Isadora to make their patches. So even though this one, might look a little complicated, you shouldn't be nervous about that. It's actually very easy to start patching it. And once you do it for a day, you'll already be flying with it. But the other part is this is a separate control panel. So anybody can also make a user interface to talk to those actors. And you can also password protect this and set it up so that only the operator can access this. So I just made a little thing. So for example, I made, here's a little thing, welcome to office hours at the bottom. I've got a button that I can push. I can move this, wherever I want. I can change the color of the background to something else if you like. So, I could have gone further with this, but I just made a little simple control. I added a thing to make a bug. I think that's what you people in the industry call this thing, a bug, right? So I can make the bug whatever size I want, and I can move it wherever I want on the screen. So I've got a button for that. And all of these have also, I can just use a key on the keyboard, B for bug, T for title, and I can bring these in. Now, what you're seeing here is, obviously, this is being layered over a movie that's playing live. But just to give you a sense, here's a checkerboard because, in fact, you could be sending this information out just as an NDI feed to be able to use this Isadora as a tool to do these kinds of overlays, for example. And then you just take the alpha, the NDI feed with an alpha channel and put it into whatever you're using, and you can set all this kind of queuing up, right?
Is it able to also use a key fill out of SDI?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Do you know if it's able to do key fill out of SDI output,
I don't know what key fill out of. I don't know what that is. You'll have to tell me.
Two feeds of video, like the alpha channel going out as a separate one, or is NDI really?
It absolutely could be set up to do that. That I don't have it configured to do that right now.
That's great. Just
for sure, you could create a situation to do that.
That's exciting.
But also, I think it's important to see, I've got a little, there's another control here called the bin picker. So I only have a few movies imported, but I can just jump to whatever clip I want to jump to. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And see that, right? And now the other thing I tried to do, which is now not going to work because Zoom changed its configuration when I went full screen, but I'll just show it anyway. I was doing a screen capture. It's now not getting, I was chopping out the zoom, right? I'm doing screen capture to chop the zoom in, but now it's all over on the right instead of along the top, so nothing's positioned right. But suffice to say, that's coming live from the screen. And And so I can also, this would be live video. I won't take the time to reconfigure it. Take my word for it.
But it can be live. What you're saying is that basically a camera input, a screen input, any of those other inputs could be live.
Well, I mean, the thing I was too nervous to try something absolutely fresh starting this morning, just in terms of preparing for today. But you know, Andy yesterday or the day before released this new, what's it called, Andy?
Zoom ISO.
Zoom ISO, which gives you siphon feeds. And does does everyone know what siphon is, or do I need to explain siphon and spout?
Go ahead and explain it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting to me that it's not more pervasive, because a lot
of us do know what it is. I'm just having you explain.
Yeah, well, it's like, it's just interesting to me. Like I argued so hard, and I even like got my users to start bugging Zoom to get them to put siphon feeds into Zoom, because it's such an obvious no-brainer that it would be so incredible to have Zoom siphon or on the Mac or spout on the PC, because it is the lowest latency, lowest impact way to get video from one program to another. Right? It's absolutely so. This is a open source on both platform system to allow you to take video. It comes right off the graphics card and goes into another program, so you have no latency, you have almost zero overhead, and it's super powerful. That's how I'm using Siphon to go out of Isadora into the program called Siphon Virtual Webcam, which is allowing me to, when I was sending the screen to you, that's how I was able to do it. Right. So anyway. So siphon and spout, I don't know where I was going before that, but, so the other thing, I just wanted to add, also, I added we have a thing called the live drawing actor, and you can see here, I can erase it, but I can sit here and I can draw on the screen if I want to. Now I can fade that in or fade it out. But like I can say, here, look at the bugs, or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome.
We did that for you, Alex.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a present to you that Andy told me you would like.
I do. I like it a lot. That's amazing.
And then the other thing that I did was that I because Andy told me also color grading might be a thing that you're interested in. So let's pick this other clip, and let's fade out the bad live view. So I attempted using some open source code this morning to replicate the color controls in DaVinci Resolve. So here, for instance, we have this gain control, but I can like offset it to be more in the red or blue areas, so we can kind of like give this a little bit of a tint, and this offset like this. Maybe we take this down a little bit, let's make it really cold. And here's the gamma control, and maybe a bit more contrast. So, I mean, I'm no expert in color grading. I've never actually even used DaVinci Resolve. But the point of what I want to show you is that in addition to the fact that this kind of color grading is actually possible live on a live signal that's coming through Isadora, I made this morning. I purposely didn't start preparing for today. This whole presentation that you're seeing, at least this part, I made today, because that's the way in which you can like have an idea, go to Isadora and make it really, really fast, right? So that's one thing that I did especially for you all. But now let me, and I'm almost done with sort of the demo part.
It gives people a great idea of how this all works.
Get to the questions. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this in the screen share. Can you see this program I'm booting right now?
We cannot. We just see Isadora right now.
Okay. Well, basically, this is I'm booting up a software called Rococo Studio Pro that works the Rococo motion capture suite and allows me to play back sequences of motion capture data. So now at the moment, I'm streaming from this program motion capture data from that program. It could also be coming from a live suite. That's how I would intend to use it into Isadora. So here now, if I go here, now hopefully you can see in the preview window
we see that.
the figure, right? So there's a figure, and you can kind of get a sense of how it's moving around, right? But if I hit the space bar and go into the next scene, now I'm taking that live drawing actor that I just showed you to annotate the screen, and I'm now adding all of those points are being traced in real time by tracking the movement of this figure from the Rococo. So the point is, here it's a recording of someone moving around, but it absolutely could be done live. And that, for me, is what Isadora is all about, is that you can do something like that. Here's another example, taking the same data and interpreting it in a different way. Here's a bouncy rope man that is also coming from the Rococo motion capture data. So taking that movement now and implementing it as some particle systems that essentially represent ropes, and you can see the results. So you get this kind of beautiful, you got some motion blur on there to kind of make it a little bit extra beautiful. But the way these springy ropes respond is kind of nice, right?
And I think we should call out that if you look in the bottom right, you'll see that his demo is running at 30 FPS. Now Zoom is delivering it to us and to YouTube at a fraction of that, but it's running smoothly.
Yeah, we get a Zoom when you do screen share. Of course, will just do what it can to give us the full resolution. So
well, I can also at this point, let me go out of screen share because maybe that'll be better, and maybe you can let's see if you can see it better and smoother through the virtual camera.
Oh yeah.
Is that better?
Way better.
All right, well, let's go back and let's enjoy the live drawing one for a second then, because I really love this one. It's really gorgeous because also the color is a bit nice.
That's awesome.
Right? So wait till he does the fast bit there, because the size of the traces is based on how fast the character is moving. So it actually is giving the inflection of how the quality of movement, right?
Right. And all of this is done through the nodes.
All of this is done through this is all Isadora stuff. Yeah. Just two more things. This is a little thing. So here's that's beautiful when it flips out like that. This is like some similar to the rope man. It's like these live ropes. Now here I'm taking my image and I'm like mapping any texture onto these ropes. But now I'm going to make it so that my mouse, I can actually stroke them with my mouse as I move again. All generated at real time, all running at 30 frames per second. This is all totally live. So hopefully you can see the little white ball. That's my mouse.
Oh, yeah.
And it has gravity. It has actually anti-gravity. So when I get near something, you can see it pushes the ropes away, right? Okay. All right. And then one other little thing here. So now running here.
He's going to make the rain stop.
Well,
with Isadora.
Let's see. Hopefully, can you see me in the little inset there?
Yep, we can.
I've got an iPad, and I'm using the iPad's accelerometers to allow me to look around a 360-degree video. Yeah?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And what I'm surprised is that I'm not hearing the sound, because we should hear the waterfall. So give me a second to check that.
Very impressive either way.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will let that go. But I don't know why that's not happening. But when it works right, as you look at the waterfall, you hear the waterfall. When you look away, it gets softer, right?
Oh,
so it really gives this illusion, this sonic illusion of being there.
As a media player, do you have? I guess so. You could send out multiple tracks. So, for instance, you can send out stereo, but you could also send out 16 tracks or 20 tracks of audio.
Yeah. Well, that's actually multi-channel audio is a feature that is coming in the next big release. That is something we've been working on. We were working on it before the pandemic, and then we totally shifted to help people support remote performance, right?
Oh, got it. Okay.
All right. And now let's see if we get lucky, if my calculations from earlier work. Here is, so I made a new version of the Zoom grid.
And this is live.
This is live. I'm screen capturing your images. You see yourself there, obviously. And so I can actually, I'm just using keys on the keyboard now to decide who I'm looking at. But of course, if we were using Andy's tools where it tells us who's speaking, we could automate this process so that it would actually turn the thing and look at the right person at the right moment based on who's speaking, right? But I'm just using screen capture to grab this and bring it in. And now I'm mapping you into an entirely new environment instead of being in this sort of rectangular grid, which I think by now we all would like to be relieved from, right? So that's my little dog and pony show. The only thing I want to add to that is that I forgot to mention when I was going through the slides earlier, we did make one of this really big pivot it became clear to me by last April that we weren't going to be in theaters for a year. And for my company, that's based on being in theaters, we really had to think fast, right?
Yeah.
And so we really dropped all the things on our roadmap and changed and pivoted to start giving people tools like this screen capture actor, which I'm using right now, to allow them to make remote performances. And they did so many of them. And I just want to brag a little bit because one of our users, Jared Mazachi, I would say it wrong. It's like Versace, Mazachi, who's an incredible user. The piece that he worked on and co-directed was named one of the best theater pieces of 2020 by the New York Times.
Wow.
Because they were able to leverage the tools that we gave them to make an absolutely brilliant, very compelling experience with actors in 3 different cities and a stage manager in a 4th city. And they brought all that together using Isadora. So there you go. That's like my little introduction, and hopefully that was interesting for people to see.
I've been in a lot of conversations about education over the last couple of weeks, and one of the things I was thinking about is, wow, that's really like the next generation for if you had a virtual school, that's what we're helping design right now, and the idea that students could be figuring out, and of course the nodal structure and building all those interrelationships has them learn all kinds of other things. It's not it's performance, but it's on top of that. There's math and interrelationship and technology and everything else all being and pulled together, but in that visceral live moment.
Well, I think that this is one of the things that Isadora is heavily used in education. I mean, they use it at Yale, they use it at Ohio State University, as I mentioned. I mean, Harvard, you name it. It's used all over the world in schools because it is such an easy entry point for a student into the world of media servers and media technology, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, I hesitate. I said it earlier, I called it a programming language. But I never really do that too much. I did that here, but because in fact, you don't know it's a programming language because it's graphic. It's not like you're writing JavaScript or C++ and you can see this language that you don't even know. You're just like, oh, let's hook some pipes together. Everyone has done that. Everyone has taken a television set and a television set and connected it in the old days to a DVD player or to a computer. That's a simple wire, and everyone understands video is passing through that, and that is the entire model of the software. But now it's not just video or audio, it's data, all the real-time data, like from the iPad here that I was using, right?
Right. Oh, and we're having a little audio there. Your audio went on or off, or it's going through something.
1, 2, 3.
Your sync slipped, Mark. So it might be that you have Isadora bound to your webcam at the same time as Zoom, and it's falling out of sync if you're in a scene that's pulling it.
All right, let me just quit Isadora now. Or, well, not quit, but I'll stop the live capture. And did that do anything?
No, you might need to rebind.
We just did a lot with a computer. I was like, I can't believe this is working.
Hello.
There you go.
Is it back? Hold on. I have to adjust my camera color light here.
There we go.
How's that? Am I back?
Perfect. It's perfect. Okay. And we've got questions stacking up, so we're going to go ahead and jump into them. Let's go ahead. Guy, what do you got?
Next one's in from Alex 4D Gollner of London, Europe, and he says Isadora is cross-platform. If one OS intrudes a compelling enough feature, will you introduce new Isadora features that aren't cross-platform?
I have hesitated to do things that are only on one platform. The one place that I am on the fence about that is virtual reality stuff, because basically it doesn't exist on Mac OS and it only exists on Windows, and that would be a natural place as an evolution for Isadora to go. That, and also the latest sort of because it is used so much for performance, body tracking, like the Microsoft Azure tracking system. There is no equivalent on Mac OS. That is like the most up-to-date way of tracking bodies that is sort of in the camera tracking commercially available to mortals. Let's put it that way. So those are things that have been in discussion among us, but I try to make it so that everything you can do on one, you can do on the other, because sometimes, and Andy can speak to this too, because he's told me this, they're designing on one platform and then doing it on another, right? And you want them to be as equal as possible. And like that's one of the things that we're also working on. We are working. I've hired a programmer specifically to work on making the media playback on Windows even better, so that because Mac OS it's pretty solid. Windows I feel like it could be better, and we're working on that. Yeah.
Next question.
Another one in from Alex in Europe. Which OS features for developers are you hoping or expecting Apple will introduce at WWDC next week?
I've been so busy, I haven't had time to think about it. I guess the thing I'm hoping that I can tell you what I hope they don't do. I hope that they don't kill OpenGL yet. It's been deprecated they've been deprecated for a long time. It's going to affect a lot of people. It'll kill Siphon for one thing. I'm really hoping that they don't take it away. The thing is, for me, we're a very small company. It's like I do 95% of the code I write myself, right? It's kind of a one-man operation that way in terms of code. And to allow that to happen, we have to have as many things as possible be the same code on both platforms, right? That makes it possible for us to continue. And this whole thing of having to switch to, I don't want to get into something too technical here, but the different technologies, Metal on Mac OS and DirectShow on Windows, to have to separate those is a big job for us. So, I know they're going to do it eventually. They're eventually going to take away OpenGL. I'm just hoping maybe not this iteration of the operating system. Other than that, I would also, I would just love to see both of them get better with movie playback. It's another topic that's come up. I've avoided FFmpeg, which other people have used, because I find the legal ramifications of it to be rather daunting, and I've stuck to using the built-in systems, AV Foundation on Mac OS and Windows Media Foundation on Windows to play media. But they could be so much better. It's when you're my age and you've been doing this for a long time, QuickTime was still the best for doing things like looping movies and certain other things. It's never been as good as it was in the early days like that. And I hope for some of those things to get better. But the fact is, Apple is really about, their main priority is about selling phones. And I don't know that those features will get the attention. I hope so, but let's see what we get.
Next question.
All right, we had one in there that was from Alex that was on OpenGL. I went ahead and passed that one up because we just answered it. So the next one is now from Andy Carluccio, and it says, it's clear how your background as a programmer has impacted your artistic career, but how has your life as an artist influenced you as a software developer?
Probably for the worse. I'm probably the most improvisational programmer I've ever met. It's really not a blessing, I can tell you. But that said, I have been in theaters. I know what artists need. And in fact, another part of the origin story of Isadora was, in general, with Troika Ranch, I did not perform. I wrote the music, and Dawn Stapiello, who was the co-director with me, choreographed the pieces. She was also dancing, but I wasn't performing on stage until we got to a certain piece when we made it called Vera's Body, and I actually performed as a kind of actor. And so it finally, in that situation, it was me in front of 300 people in New York City when the computer crashed and the screen went blue and everybody heard the Mac reboot in the background, and everybody knew what had happened. And that was a terrible thing to do, to be on stage in front of those people and having to know that that's happening. And now what do I do, right? Because my whole accompaniment is gone. And I said, I am going to do my damnedest to make sure that doesn't happen to anybody else ever, because that's just terrible. I'm very proud of Isadora's reliability. I'm not saying it's 100% perfect, but we really try to keep it as it's mission critical. People are on stage. You can't take it back. There's no second take, right? And so that to me is something that's really important. But anyway, getting back to my programming, I think I wanted to feel good under my fingers. I'm an artist. I want to be able to think like an artist when I touch this. I don't want to have to be technical. And that has been the main thing that has driven the way that I've developed the software. And I think that a lot of people that use our software relate to that. And that's why it remains popular, with those folks. Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that again, I'll keep on coming back to when people are solving their own problems and they're actually using it. Mokana for us, this Q&A system that we're using, something we use all the time. And I have to use it as I'm dependent on it to run this show, and because of that, there's lots of little tweaks that we keep on adding because we're using it. And I think that a lot of times companies call it fish fooding or dog fooding their software, but unless you're really the programmers who are writing it are using it all the time. I've worked with companies that have done a lot of things that around video and everything else. Programmers just keep doing what you ask them to do, but they don't use it at all. So I think that's the challenge, and I think that's definitely part of what makes Isadora what it is.
Well, it's also let me just add to that. It in its early days, Don and I were two of the preeminent figures in this kind of melding of dance and technology. There weren't a lot of people in the United States pursuing this in 1994 when we really founded Troika Ranch. We got invited to like 1 million universities to teach workshops, thankfully, because that was how we got started. But when I was, later, when I made Isadora, we started taking that and teaching the students how to use it. And the early days there, I told this to Alex when we met earlier, I would teach the class, I'd see where they fail or Isadora would crash, or I'd see the dancers be like, I'm lost, I have no idea what the hell to do. I would go home that night, I would reprogram that part of the program, compile it, and bring in a new version. And I would do that every day during the teaching phase, like if we were there for a week or whatever teaching. And it was through that iterative process of watching non-technical users learn to use the software that it became what it is. I really was so lucky that I had this kind of amazing interactive beta test phase that lasted years, Yeah, no,
absolutely.
So next question. Sorry.
We've got two questions that are related to each other. So we'll go ahead and answer. We'll use Tom Winelands.
Tom Winelands in San Francisco. How does Isadora compare or work with VJ software like Module 8 or Resolume? Thanks.
They're kind of two different beasts. You can, in the early days of Isadora, there were actually quite a few VJs using it, not so much anymore. You can make a VJ kind of setup in Isadora, especially using that control panel. I have one picture of the most astonishing control panel. It has the most buttons ever that I could have shown you. But it's a little bit different in that, in the end, the path of routing is kind of, as I understand it, because I haven't used those softwares a lot. So if I'm saying this wrong, someone please tell me that I'm lying. But you don't have the kind of flexibility. In Isadora, every one of those wires can be routed where you want it to be. So if any of you are familiar with analog synthesizers, these ones with all the wires that you connect like that, Isadora is much more like that than it is, let's say, a synthesizer where you have some presets and you can make some adjustments. So I think that there are certain limitations to the routing possibilities that you have in softwares like that, whereas in Isadora, really, you could do almost anything because none of this is, you start with a blank slate. You can really make anything you want. But I think also that they are optimized to be able to do looping and switching to clips really fast. And there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I think they work in two different realms a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the next question from John Preto as well. Next, let's jump to the next question from Victor.
Next one's from Victor Cahill in Brookings, South Dakota. Can Andy do a brief review of how Isadora is being used to control my small show with Streamweaver?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go ahead and jump into a screen share if I can get co-hosts there real quick. And so for the Sunday Sax Jam, we use Isadora. I made a front end for TJ Asher, who cuts the show. And Streamweaver allows OSC to go from TJ's network over to Victor's network so we can control the X32, the ATEM, and QLab for playout. So here's what it looks like. Let me jump here. So this is just, again, another Isadora front end. On the back side is just a bunch of converters where these buttons trigger off, then flow into, oh, did I crash? Wow, interesting. I don't. Wow,
We can hear you.
Wow,
I don't know if you can hear us.
I totally died there.
We can hear you, but you're frozen. Your image is frozen.
Let's jump to the next question while Andy works
Wow,
on
we
it.
really
Zoom-
lost him.
Oh, there we go.
Zoom
Are you back,
totally
Andy?
just died on me. Isadora was fine. Zoom died. Let me try to share that again. So,
Okay, great.
yeah, so this is the front end. I assume you can see this now. So the buttons on this interface and these little sliders and knobs, they convert to OSC. That OSC flows into Streamweaver and then out of Streamweaver on Victor's network on the other side. So all I have to do is distribute this interface to any operator that I want, and they'll be able to control Victor's show. They don't have to understand, all the different, it's a single dashboard basically to control all the equipment at Victor's place. So that's what I love about Isadora is all the inputs and the outputs areas. I mean, it can talk to everything and listen to everything else because it has all these open protocols. From MIDI, OSC, it can talk to decklink drivers directly, spout, siphon, NDI. I mean, it really does have all of that. So it's fabulous.
That's amazing. Yeah, it would be fun to tear that apart. Like that'd be a great little Saturday project or a couple Saturday projects. Is just take Victor's control unit and build it as a group like we did with the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do
super
that.
useful. Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes from Guy Cochran in Seattle. Can one create a web browser page to control a PTZ camera and do simple cuts plus graphics with Isadora?
Wow, interesting question. Isadora does have some TCP IP modules, and so conceivably you could be sending some data from a server that way. Maybe Andy's got his hand raised. He probably has this is probably more his topic than me, his area than mine.
Mm-hmm.
We've done it. So we do it with the get URL text actor. Hits a web request, talks to the Panasonic Web Control Protocol, can move the cameras around. Front end, you can make that in whatever you want, Node-RED, however you want to host that server. Have it talk OSC to tell Isadora to translate that into a web request and do all the other play out things in sync with it. Talalik's show that he did at Salisbury University was actually set up this way. They had Panasonic cameras and they made little mini sets so each actor would be isolated from each other. And then Isadora tied all the media and all the projections back to each other and cut the camera cues with remote operators and Streamweaver all tying it together. Isadora was the centerpiece of all of that.
That's great. Next question.
It's amazing. All right. Next one's coming in from Jonas Dattel in Reutlingen, Germany. Can Isadora control a hyperdeck?
What's a hyperdeck? I don't know.
Hyperdeck is a hardware playout system. So it's a recorder and playout that Blackmagic makes. So it's just you put an SSD drive in. And it has its own. It can take.
Does it take serial data?
It doesn't take. It might take serial data, but it also takes. But I think you'd be able to do it through terminal commands. You can just send it commands.
Okay.
Well, I would be surprised if it couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, the things that Isadora offers are open sound control, MIDI, serial I/O, right? You can also talk. You can have like an Arduino,
It does RS422, so
yeah,
you should be able to do it.
Yeah, so I think that would be the way to do it is through RS422. Sorry, I don't know the device, but I am assuming if it has that kind of protocol, Isadora has a capability of doing input and output through serial. So that would be probably the way to go.
I bet you could do jog and shuttle with it as well. And I bet you could do it with like a hand controller where you just kind of go like this. It just goes just slowly forward and back.
Well, I mean, it's like I can't remember if I told you that story. Yes, I did during the thing, but just back to the early days of Troika Ranch, when 1996, when we made the very first piece, the piece that put us on the map, we wanted to control video, but you couldn't even do that on a computer yet. It wasn't possible. So somehow I ended up buying one of the hundreds of Panasonic Laserdisc players that was part of the Edit Droid system at the early Lucasfilm. And I found a way to interface that with serial commands, just like we're talking about, so that I could control the Laserdisc player to jump to any frame I wanted to, play forward or backward, or play at any speed I wanted to, which allowed the dancer's movement for the first time to control video. So, see, I mean, I needed the serial control has been around forever.
Right, exactly.
So that's a tried and true method for being able to access other devices.
I just realized though that this kind of interface of going from one set of data to another, because there's these little finger controls you can put on your hands and stuff like that. But I can just imagine the next generation of playback operator just going like this. I just want to go faster. Oh no, back, and then just go. And then stop. And then forward. So we're gonna have that's gonna be something we have to do. All right, next question.
Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Herrenalb, Germany says, could the annotation tool be a brush with soft edges so that it looks more like a pen?
Yeah, I worked on some code to make the edges soft, but I wasn't satisfied with the result, so I took it back out. You can do some things like you can run the result through a Gaussian blur to kind of soften it. But it's interesting. My partner, she has a beautiful iPad and she's an animator, and she's using all these incredible brushes. And I must say, I was having brush envy the other day looking at this going, why can't we do that? Because that looks really good. The answer is right now, aside from running it through an effect like a Gaussian blur to soften it, there isn't a feature in the actor itself to do that. But that's something that, honestly, I was really admiring these programs. I think it's called Procreate that she's using for doing animation. It's unbelievable what these brushes do, and I would love to see us do something like that.
One thing that I saw with the draw tool there is, so with the one that I use, what it does pretty well is basically smooths out the curve. Is that something that you can do as far as that?
Yeah,
it's getting input at a certain rate.
Yeah, I think part of it would be, if I was using Isadora for that, I would run it at 60 FPS instead of 30, or I would run it at double the frame rate so that it was sampling. I mean, it's sampling the mouse right now. I don't have a Wacom tablet, so I couldn't do it. I think if I was doing it with a Wacom tablet, did you notice how smooth they were when they were coming from the Rococo?
Well, I can tell you that when we first did this, it was all jagged lines, because it was a linear from each sample, and what we did is we built it into a Bezier curve, or not a Bezier, but a B-spline.
That's something that I mean, the live drawing tool, I don't know. I was saying
you just made it up. Like, it was just like real quick.
Well, no, the live drawing tool existed, but did you notice how smooth it was with the Rococo data?
It is.
And I think part of it is the resolution of the data coming in, but
right.
It's like everything with this. If I mean, I never knew about this annotation thing being a thing, right? I didn't know that was going to make you happy, Alex. But now that it makes you happy,
it's funny.
But now that it makes you happy, then I have to go, well, maybe there's some other people that would make happy, and maybe we should invest a little more time into making it smooth.
What happened is that I was teaching classes in Rwanda from my office in San Francisco, and I just needed something to draw on, and so I've been building this slowly for a decade in different ways, and so I think people saw it here and they were like, "How do you do that?" It's like the number one question in office hours right now is, how do you make the telestrator?
Okay.
And so it is we get the question like 2 or 3 times a week. They're like, how do you do that? And mine's hardware. It's like a hardware little route that does that. So anyway, it's very interesting. Anyway, next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, wow, how are you mapping the specific Zoom quadrants into Isadora? And then he has a note. If you use ZoomISO, could you take the NDI siphon feeds and map them into Isadora?
Yes. So here, I'll go ahead and screen share. Well, I mean, I can't. I mean, it won't work anymore, but I'll at least let you see how I'm doing it. So let's see here. Not to see the screen share. Sorry. Isadora. Okay. Can you see Isadora again?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just hide this preview now. So what I'm doing is there's an actor called the screen capture. It's in beta. That's why it says beta. And you just tell it the Zoom stuff is over in display too. So you just tell it what pixel is, how far you want to crop it from the top and from the bottom and from the left and the right, and you get an output. So instead of seeing the entire display, you see part of it. So to see that in action, I can just do that real quick because you haven't actually seen me patch anything in Isadora. So here's the screen capture actor, and here's a projector. The projector actor is what renders video, right? So now I'm on display 1, but if I go to display 2, there you go. There's Zoom, right? And there you all are on the right. So if I wanted to grab just one of you, I'm going to just type in a guess here. Let's say 1800. Oops. 1800 on the left. Yeah, okay. So see now, but in here, see, I can just grab this number and I go, whoop, there you are. And then I go, whoop, there you are. And now I just have to crop it from the top. And I can crop it from the bottom. Whoops, wrong way. Yeah, there comes Alex, there comes Alex, there he is. So now I'm chopping I'm chopping that part of display too. Obviously, it's low res. He's only like a little postage stamp over there on the right. But now I'm able to get this out. That's how people have been doing all of these remote performances for a year with Isadora, is using, and what they do is they put the Zoom grid on a 4K display to get as much resolution as they can when they're chopping it out this way. But now with Zoom ISO, you're going to have the opportunity with these siphon feeds to get it directly out of that, and you don't have to bother with this cropping. And the most important, actually, I didn't ask you this question, Andy. Maybe you can answer it. Do you get separate audio feeds or not?
No,
we don't. We don't get separate audio feeds yet.
Okay. Well, because in theater, that's something that we really would like to have.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I talked about that for like 20 minutes yesterday. Yeah, it's like all we need is audio.
Well, that's something we'd really like to have, right? And so that's obviously the dream. And we're working on things to try and deal with that problem. And maybe NDI, then all this new stuff that they introduced, the point-to-point stuff. But just while we're here, just to give you, since I didn't really show the patching process. Let me take an effect and put it on Alex here. So now Alex is a bunch of dots, right? And so we can adjust that. It's like a halftone effect, and I can make this it's a little bit rough because the resolution of his video is so low. But you get the idea. I can adjust this and say, okay, I want to look like this. I don't actually want the color anymore or whatever. But the key to Isadora is that I can do this. If I go here, and I'm going to turn off the camera for now and just capture the audio. So here, now if you can see these numbers moving, that's the volume of my voice speaking, right? And I can take that and I route that data into this dot size so that when I speak, I can modulate that video in real time using my voice, right? And that's like the demo I give to everyone when I begin Isadora, because that is like everything you need to know about the software, real-time control over the data. Now, I didn't answer your question. I left your question. The original question was, how do we capture stuff from Zoom? How am I doing that right now? And you saw how I did it. And then, yes, Zoom ISO, I will be trying that over the weekend, I'm sure, to experience that and see what it's like.
That's great. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Andy, before we...
I was going to say, real quick, we make an auto cropper in Isadora for Zoom. So if it listens to ZoomOSC, you never have to punch in the values. It will just create isolated outputs inside of Isadora from the gallery view based on the location data that we can provide it. So that's another way to do it.
See, I should have been smart enough to show that, but I'm actually so busy coding, I don't get to try all the cool stuff that Andy makes for Isadora. I just get to sit there and go, oh my gosh, look at what he just did, right? So, yeah.
Is there a way for people to submit nodes to you? Is there a way to develop those nodes?
There is an SDK. We're a little bit behind on getting it an up-to-date version out there. But for instance, Andy, because of our relationship, has the SDK. He's made some plugins for Isadora. It is possible. But also in Isadora, you can make something called a user actor, where you take other Isadora nodes and you hook them all together in the way you want, and then you just publish that. So that for that, you don't need to be a coder. You just make an actor that combines these things, and then you can share that with the other users.
That's been something we like way back in the days of Shake, which is a compositor from that,
right?
That we use, that we bring those all together and just only expose what we want people to see. Like here are the only dials that you need. And Alex Goldner here, who does it in Motion, he'll build those things in Motion and then expose that to Final Cut users. Like, here's the only dials you need to know. It's a great, really, really powerful tool. Next question.
Next one's in from Jesse in Los Angeles, and he says, the capabilities of the software are really impressive. How long would it take someone new to Isadora to get up to speed typically? I'd love to create something like the theater in the round manipulation of the Zoom gallery you demonstrated.
Well, you'll be doing something the first day that you use it. I mean, you'll immediately find that you're able to do certain things. Now, getting to the level like these 3 images that are rotating like that, that's like a little bit more advanced. But I actually, we have a whole series of advanced video tutorials. When the pandemic started, I didn't actually do it to teach. I just wanted our users to get together because everybody was out of work. And I wanted a kind of a social event where people that use the software all over the world could come together. But I used an opportunity to teach them. So these are they're called the Guru sessions, and each one is about an hour and a half, and there's a deep dive into a particular topic inside of Isadora. So in one of those, I actually teach you how to do what you saw today, essentially, because I originally did that for a piece called Swarm, a Troika Ranch piece called Swarm, where I had 6 screens and I needed to project a different image on each screen, right? And so it was modeled in the same way. But anyway, what you saw today, you also need to have a little bit of knowledge in 3D, because if I should screen share again. Hold on one sec, if I can get this together. Yeah, here. So I made this in Cheetah 3D. This is a Mac-only program.
I haven't heard of Cheetah for a long time.
Well, but the thing I like about it, because I'm not an expert, is it's just so simple. God, opening Blender or whatever is that's just way too much for me. So here you see one of the 4 screens that I made. And if we look at how I did it, it's here it is from the top. I don't know if you can, you won't be able to see it that way, really. Well, in any case, I think you get the idea. There's one of the 4 screens, and it has a texture map associated with it, right? You can see here that I just have this 1920 by 1080 card in there, right? So that's one of them. But if I go here and here's another one. Here's the other screen. So I bring all these into Isadora at the same time. I've got 4 of those, right?
And what do you export them as?
3DS. That's one of the limitations that we're hoping to improve. It's I know it's an ancient format that nobody really uses anymore. We need to get that up to date. But right now, they go in as 3DS files. And then if I switch again to Isadora so you can see it.
We recommend USDZ.
Is that the one?
That's what all the cool kids are about to use.
Okay. All right. Now if I go to that patch here. Whoops. Oh, now there's the sound.
There we have the sound. Sound's working great. Yep.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Now I got to show that. That's good. So now again, you won't see the right Zoom feeds anymore because I'm in full screen, but I want you to see the patch. So you see here, this is a 3D player. The 3D player simply plays a 3D object and renders it. You have the ability, if you sit here, let's look at the one that has the Isadora logo. So here, if I spin it around so that the Isadora logo's front and center, now you can see that if I go down to the controls on this, I hit a bunch of inputs in here. Let me expose them again. So here now I've exposed some other inputs, so you can see I can rotate, I can move that around in 3D space, but I set it up in Cheetah so that it was all lined up perfectly, and all I had to do was import the models. And then to be able to rotate it, we just spin the camera around, right? So there's an actor called, gotta find it here, 3D stage orientation. Where are you? Yeah, here. So now that's the camera, right? So I can sit here and I can rotate to look anywhere I want to look, but I can also, do whatever kinds of, well, that doesn't help us. I can do other trends like here, I can. So you see how it works basically, right? You import the different models, bring them into the system, and then you can actually sit there and just render onto them, and that's how you end up. So that's kind of a super short, not very complete picture of how it works, but that's how it's done.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Alex 4D Golner, and he says, what nodes in Isadora should you avoid to maintain your desired frame rate? How do you profile JavaScript snippets, for instance?
Yeah, that's something also that I want to try and get into a version coming up, is a way to actually show you where the hotspots in your patch are. Right now, it's certainly possible, but Isadora doesn't yet offer you this information to measure how much time is being spent inside of each module so that we could highlight them visually, so you would know actually that you would know that there's a problem or that it's consuming a lot of power, right? At the moment, the only way to really try that is to probably to remove, if you're suspicious that it's a certain thing, is to remove that module. I mean, that's not the most efficient way. But also, once you start working with Isadora, you start to get a sense of the places where you can get in trouble. Like, for instance, I started this whole thing with the water. Like, if I switch my camera again for a sec. So there's this water. That's not a video, that's a shader. I went to, one of the things you can do with Isadora, it supports GLSL shaders. And I just went and found that on the web and I imported it into Isadora. You can do that from Shader Toy or from GLSL Sandbox, or if you know how to write shader code, you can write it yourself. And, you can see that I can control some things about that. So like, for instance, if I go here and change the rate, I can make the water move faster, or I can make it move slower. Right? So that's not a video, that's actually being generated in real time. So that's great. And that is like actually a super efficient shader, but there's some of them out there that have 4 next loops in them. And man, you put those into your patch and like suddenly you're doing 1 FPS. Like that's one of those kinds of things that from experience, you would start to get a sense that that's a place where something can go wrong. And there's other features where, like one of the things that's kind of, I think, unique to Isadora is that it's possible to record the output of the stage to a movie and then immediately import it so that you can use that material as part of your show. Like I've done that in pieces where I actually have a camera on the iPad and I'm wirelessly sending an image of a dancer. In this piece, it was a dancer on stage. I was actually on stage with her, acting as kind of a cameraman, moving around with this iPad. And I filmed all this material and collected it and recorded it to disk. And then I did a companion piece that when her piece was over, another 15 minutes that was a live remix of everything she had just done. But for example, if you're running that feature and trying to capture 1920 by 1080 and grab the stage, that's a place where maybe Isadora slows down. So again, that's a place where experience kind of tells you. I don't know if that really answers your question. I think that the ultimate answer is that we would like to get a feature into the program that allows you to that allows you to actually see where those hotspots are instantly so that you don't have to try and debug it and guess yourself.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's in from TJ Asher in Minnesota. Can you explain your pricing structure? Sure.
So we, because I'm not really a fan of subscriptions, but I know that that works for some people. We both offer both buy to own and subscription. So the way that we work with the buy to own is right now the price of Isadora is $550 for to buy it. And own it, and you get updates until we get to a next major version. So for example, we're in Isadora 3 right now. We've had Isadora 3.06, 07, and now 3.08. All of those have gone out to the users for free. When we cross the line and add features that we feel are significant enough to get to Isadora 4, then you're going to pay an upgrade price to get Isadora 4. Then we also have yearly and monthly subscriptions. And honestly, I don't know the prices off the top of my head, which is a little bit embarrassing too. I should know that. But we can actually look here in a second if you want. But basically, you can either license by the month or by the year for a subscription price. And then you're just paying it. And then you get new versions. There's no upgrading. You're just always getting you always get to have the latest version, right? The other option that we offer is a monthly rental, where let's say you're going to do a show and you need to put this into a theater so that the theater people can run your show that you've designed. Then you would just do a monthly rental for 1 or 2, 3 months, whatever you need to put it in the theater, right? And so those options are pretty inexpensive. Just to go over it, the yearly subscription is 145 euros per year. I don't have the dollars in front of me, but you can check our website and see. The monthly subscription is 17 euros per month. And the rental, actually it's a 7-day rental. You do it in 7-day increments. That's 10 euros per 7 days for the rental, right? You're actually better off getting the subscription. The only thing that's good about the rental is you don't have to cancel the subscription. It's for a fixed amount of time, right?
Right.
So that's the pricing structure.
And you can also distribute Isadora patches without licensing them for operation purposes after you edit them. Right.
Yeah, that's so like, because this was a feature in Max MSP, which in the early days was like a competitor, they have a thing where you can make a runtime only version, right? So in Isadora, you can actually save a complete patch, and as long as you don't need the operator to save any changes that they've made to it, because the demo does everything except save, you can send that patch and they can actually run what you've made for them, and you don't have to buy the software. I wish you would buy it, but it is possible to do it that way, because also the other reason that we did that, the other place Isadora gets used a lot is for museum installations. So artists who are making installations in museums, and these aren't rich people. These are like really artists, struggling to make their life work, which, I was one of those once. I have a lot of sympathy for people in that financial position. So we made it possible that they could create their Isadora setup for an installation, install it in the museum, and leave that demo version there to be able to not have to pay for another version to get it to go.
And I think that there's something very scalable about that, as also because, for instance, with what we're planning to do with office hours, as we make this much more complex and everything else, and I'm very interested in using Isadora as part of that pipeline, is that we're going to have lots of people all over the world and different people for different days. And the idea of having that many licenses going out, at least to start with, will be hard. But being able to say, okay, here's the thing you need to do, and send it out. And then we'll have a fair number of licenses internally to develop it.
Well, in the end, it's like, I can't say that I'm an excellent businessman. I can't say that I've actually, been terribly good. I don't really think about money, because somehow I was trained as an artist. I make it so that we can make Isadora better, and that I can live, and that hopefully the people I employ can live in a good way. And, nonstop growth has never been the goal of my company. We have kept it small on purpose. It also means that we've been really agile and able to change quickly. So, in the end, if you give those demos out, or someone, museums have bought Isadora because the installation artist used it, and they need a tool to be able to they need to be able to set up stuff for a video artist that wants their work to be shown. It's so easy. Like, you just drag clips into Isadora, and in 2 minutes, you have like a sequence and you're done. And it just put it on autoplay and it's done. And so I know that in the end it sells software.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Vincent Alvarez in Bellingham, Washington. Seeing Isadora for the first time, I'm thinking of using the virtual circular Zoom setup for conducting group counseling sessions for teams over Zoom. Do you know of Isadora currently being used in a similar way?
No, I don't. But if you do that, I was thinking that I ought to publish this patch somehow today. I didn't really prepare for that, but I should share this somehow so that people could download it and check it out, because this is kind of like a mini guru session in a way. If you do that, write us. I think the other thing that is important for people watching to know, that there's a lot of things about the software that are really awesome, but what is really awesome? Our user community. There's no community like it. Go to our forum sometime and ask a question. 5 people are going to answer that question within 24 hours. And they're not going to even be from my team. They're going to be other Isadora users. The kind of generosity that I have seen exhibited, not to mention lack of animosity, lack of trolling, no one there ever says, that's a stupid question, why are you asking that? It's not like that. I just will share with you one other little anecdote that is somehow important to me. Years ago, I gave a workshop, one of the early Isadora workshops, to a bunch of really technical theater users for the first time. And we all came together and we had a great few days. Afterwards, I got together with one of the people who came to that, who I didn't really know very well. We went to see a show together in Berlin. And he said, God, it was so great. Everybody gave away their secrets. He said, everyone was so generous. I said, yeah, I know. It's astonishing, isn't it? He said, but you are also really generous. And I said, well, that's really nice of you to say. Thank you. And then he said something super interesting. He said, do you think you've embedded your personality in the software so much that only people like you use it?
Well, I will say that office hours is very much people stay here who are curious and collaborative, and interested in helping other folks. People, everyone else kind of passes through, and I'm totally okay with that. It's, I think, we get in my opinion, the cream of the crop are the ones that stay in there, and I think that you always benefit from that collaboration.
Sure. So, I mean, going back to the question though, if you do that, I love the purpose of this. Ask on the forum or send us a ticket. We can help you. We'll help you make that happen if that's something you'd like to try. I'd love to see it be used for a purpose like that. That would really be pleasing for me.
That's great. Next question.
Jonas Dottel in Reutlingen, Germany. Can Isadora run on a Raspberry Pi to work as glue between devices?
I'm sorry, I don't support Linux. I would love to, but it's already, as I said, it's just me. I'm almost just me writing this code, and I'm afraid I just can't take on another operating system. I wish I could.
Next question.
Fred in Germany. Is Isadora Apple Silicon ready?
It runs right now on an M1. I know many people that are already using the Intel version. I have a version sitting over here on this Mac Mini M1 that runs already, that compiles and is native. It is our goal. To have an M1 native version by the time the school semester starts in the fall, because that, for us, again, I mentioned that education is such an important market for us, and that's something that we kids will be heading into school this fall, and we need to have it ready. So it's not M1 native yet, but it will be. We're going to lose a few things along the way, though. Like, we have this great support for Connect 1, Connect 2, and different tracking cameras to do body tracking. Again, it may not be important to you if you're not working with dance, but all of that is Intel only. It's not my code. It's old. That's not going to make it to the M1. And so I'm working on solutions, because that is particularly, that's a pet part of Isadora for me. But in general, everything else, most, like 95% of the program is going to be maintained.
Next question.
Keenan Campbell in Princeton, Illinois says ZoomOSC and Isadora Saturday for Office Hours Lab.
Yeah, we'll get that going.
The Elton John Billy Joel hour.
Yeah.
Super happy to do that. Today I was super nervous because, it's kind of a different constituency than I'm used to, you all, and I was very worried, but now I'm fine. But anyway, I'm happy to show up again on a Saturday to do that.
Awesome. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Leland Best in Corona, Michigan, and he says, "Can Isadora take out the trash and let the dog out at night?"
No, but wait, I have to show you. Here's my favorite actor.
I think it might actually be able to do that if you thought about it.
Well, you
could talk to an Arduino.
Hold on. I did the wrong thing here. Dang it. Now I'm going to be dark again. I did actually, as a joke, one time, I did actually do a thing where I could turn the coffee maker on as a joke, where you could send a command from Isadora. We had one of those dimmer packs that isn't a dimmer pack, it's just a switch. So I sent DMX out to do that. But the thing I was gonna, if I can screen share for one more second, let me find the button. So Isadora has a thing that almost, I can say, no other software has. It has the crash actor. And this bomb symbol, if any of you see, this will date you. That is a screenshot of the actual bomb symbol that used to come up in the original Mac operating system when something crashed. But actually, you can click that. I won't do it, but if you click that, it crashes Isadora. It was actually an internal thing that we needed for testing different stuff, and it kind of accidentally leaked out. So now, but I kind of left it there because I think it's kind of funny, because people actually, write me, "Why do you have a crash actor in Isadora?" I don't know. So that is one of the unique features of Isadora. It has its own method to make itself crash.
That's great. And next question.
Next one coming in from Benjamin in Berlin, Germany, and he says, "Are there any plans on implementing an MQTT send and receive actor, or is there even already a handy solution to receive data between multiple devices in different locations, networks via an MQTT broker?"
I am sorry, but I don't know what MQTT is. This is out of my area. Can someone tell me? Andy, someone else?
Well, we're talking about the ability to have multiple Isadoras communicate with each other over the public internet.
Yeah,
just in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah. Andy and I have become good friends in the last several months.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael that says, how are you getting the live video into the Isadora UI you built, Andy?
So that one doesn't actually take in the live UI, it just has playback of Victor's clips. So TJ runs a multi-view coming out of the ATEM as a secondary input. But you can bring live input in as Mark has shown, and you can actually display that live input inside of the control panels as well. You can get stage images and stuff to render out there inside of the control panel. And that will be done through the same cropping or ISO methods that we discussed today.
Next question.
But just to answer that from the Isadora point of view, Isadora currently, if you're talking about hardware like, either USB cameras of some kind or Blackmagic, we support both. So, just the sort of standard interface for getting the cameras in. We can have up to 4 cameras at the same time. On USB, actually, if you don't have a desktop with multiple buses, that's not going to happen. But you could have 2 usually on a laptop, on a Mac, where you maybe only have the 1 bus. But you can have multiple cameras coming in live to Isadora, and all of those can be shown and mixed, just like you saw with everything I'm doing. It's just like video is video, whether it's a movie or it's a live feed, it doesn't matter. You just take it and you mix it, and you can composite it in whatever way you want. You saw the way I was moving those images around with the little interface I made. You can place them anywhere and zoom them up or down, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty easy. The compositing and layering in Isadora is pretty easy, and you have full alpha channel support, so you can do all kinds of blending and stuff like that.
Sorry, I'm thinking through a bunch of other...
Boston, and he's asking, I'd be curious if anyone is using Isadora for internet broadcast, taking inputs from audience metrics or chat.
Very good question. I don't know that anyone is taking that information in. One of the great people on my team, Ryan Weber, did a demo of just that. It was actually both members of my team. I have another member called L. They both did things because we could get this with ZoomOSC. We could analyze the chat. One of them just made a thing where it was like a game controller, and you could type left, right, forward, backward, and it would actually move around this 3D world based on what you wrote in the chat. So, but I don't know if that's analyzing it. We have another project coming up working with some people in Montreal, which I can't get into too many details, but I can tell you that looking into what we can do with chat and what it tells us about how audiences are participating is very interesting to me, because to me, and this is great because this has what I'm looking for in so many of these remote performance pieces that were made with Isadora, which I'm super proud that we were able to facilitate that. What was missing for me is the sense of co-presence of the audience. So when you're in a theater, you know that there's someone to your left and someone to your right, and the energy of the room. I mean, even though I don't see the whole grid, I see the people on the panel, and even that gives me a feeling about the energy in the room and what that's like. That is super important for a performer. And so bringing audiences in to be part of these performances, because even though we're going back to Broadway, and Broadway will open and theaters will open, fingers crossed, and stay open, remote performance is never going away, because that experimental artist in some town where normally they might be able to draw in 40 or 50 people to come to see their work because it's not mainstream, suddenly had audiences of 200 because the entire world could come to them. Yeah. And that's just not going to go away. That just like I heard you talking about remote work, but when I came in earlier, that's not going away either. So just like that, this aspect of remote performance, it is going to continue. And we really, I want to support that, but I want to support it in a way that we can really bring the audience in and make them feel like they're sharing something. That to me is crucial. And I'm happy to experience it here today. But I want to see more of that, see what we can do with Isadora. So getting back to the original question, things are going to happen on that topic. You should stay tuned with us, I think.
The folks here, I'll just tell you real quickly, the folks here have heard this story before, but we took a situation where we took people's comments and we can send it back to an Arduino and then use the Arduino to pull the trigger on a flamethrower. And 140,000 interactions a minute. Like it was like the crowd went absolutely crazy. Like
you really need to talk to an old friend of mine. There's an amazing artist, a dear friend of mine from New York days called Eric Singer. He made a version of the game Simon. but it was 4 tuned flamethrowers that actually made a pitch when the flames came out. It was really amazing. I think you need to get him to get Simon out of the warehouse and like hook it up to the Arduino. I think you have people making music with it as well.
Yeah. I think that I do agree with you wholeheartedly that the audience interaction, that event was a failure because the interactions were so much the database on the platform. We're not our database, but the other one broke. It literally just shut down. But what we saw was that the next generation, to your point, was that kinetic, the audience being able to control kinetically things within the stage environment with their input. Kind of opened up an entirely different world of interaction than we expected. And so, we've got a lot of plans for that, as we, that happened years ago, but we've been slowly tooling away. And I think that things like Isadora, will allow us to do those interactions that we want to do. And Andy, I didn't know if you wanted to add something to that.
I was just going to say that for the strict professionals, some of the largest Zoom-based events in the world are running using Isadora right now.
Yeah. Next question.
Last one in from Douglas Carmichael. It seems Isadora seems to be similar to many industrial control systems, along with music synthesis, like tools like Native Instruments Reactor. Is it basically connecting controls in the user interface to nodes that actually perform the operations you wish?
Yep, that's essentially it. And my history as being trained as a composer of electronic music, absolutely informed the creation of this. It's also interesting to know, just for fun, to know the history of this. Max MSP, it was, and for many people, again, this is a long time ago. This is on, Macintosh is like the one over my head here. Can you see like the Mac SE30 on the shelf there? Anyway, people think that was the first node-based system like that. But in fact, the very first that I know about, there may have been something before, but the very first was a program called Hookup, created by a fellow called David Levitt, who was actually heavily involved in the early days of virtual reality sound when he was working with Jaron Lanier. But anyway, he created Hookup at MIT when he was a student, and it was the first program that I know of that had modules where you could hook wires together to send data around. And so it goes all the way, back to that. But he too was a musician. He was an audio person, just like I am a musician and an audio person. So I think the history of analog synthesizers with patch cords totally informs where this comes from. I'm sure that that's part of why it got made the way it got made.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, for a lot of us, MSP has been something that was the first step that we took in that area regarding, but I think that's why it showed up that way. Thank you so much, Mark. I hope this is
so much fun. I had a great time. Like I said, I was nervous at first, but I think it all worked out all right.
It was great. It was great. I a lot of times I look at the curve in Photoshop, or not in the curve of people in YouTube and in Zoom and everything else. You can see it drop off, and you can see people aren't that interested. This one was just solid. People are like, okay, I got to understand this. We definitely hope to bring you back for possibly some Saturday labs, and there's so many places that I can see how this can affect. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on is affect a lot of the stuff we want to do in the future that is not just in Zoom, but oftentimes very, very virtual. And to your point, playing to a world stage, that we now have access to, and it's a really powerful program. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. And just one question before we kind of go. Will we see each other after we close the meeting? Will we still see each other, or is everybody leaves at the same time?
We'll all leave at the same time. Andy can probably send you the post link, because we're all going to a lot of folks hang out. I have to go to work. This is my work day, but we'll talk more. But Andy can send you the post link or if you registered, if you registered right this morning, you wouldn't be able to do it. But he can send you the post link. A bunch of us are going to hang out.
That'd be great. I would love to have another moment to chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Mark, I just sent you the post show, so you can.
Okay, great.
That. Yeah.
All right, and that's what we're going to do right now. So thank you to the panel for a great, great participation as always. Thanks to our producers who are all watching. Great set of questions, and we've got a new set of people that are adding more questions in mass. So that really, really great work there. And we'll see a lot of you tomorrow. We'll jump into the post show right now. All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.